do I have?
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no coal. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report, and my name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. We are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, writers are on strike, actors are on strike, UPS workers are running towards a strike. The UAW begins negotiations with a bang. Bosses are acting up, all that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open, folks. You can call or text 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail and we might respond to it on the next show. So if you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online. You can go to TVLR.fm, bookmark that page because that's our website. We update that pretty regularly with articles, summaries of some of the segments that we did on the last show, in original reporting, commentary, stuff like that. You can also go to YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, all that and more. Just search for the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support really helps keep us on the air. And here's some crazy stuff, Adam, that you may not know about. We got 1,000 new subscribers on YouTube last month. Did you realize that?
That's great.
We got 1,000 new subscribers. You know what's not as great? We only got one new monthly donor.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. Let's get those numbers up, folks.
We could do
those
way
are
better.
Those are rookie numbers. And I'm not just saying that, and that money doesn't go just straight into my pocket, right? I actually do this on a totally volunteer basis, which does not make me, better or anything like that. It's just I happen to be in a place where I can do this on a volunteer basis. But that does not mean that the entire show is free and is zero cost. There are a lot of costs that go into the running of the show. We do have other people that do actually work for the project. We have to pay them. We pay them $20 an hour. We pay for this studio space here. This amazing, look at this microphone. That is not free. That is not a free microphone. Look at these lights over here that you can't actually see the lights, but you can see what they're doing. Look at that. Those lights in the background, all of this, that costs money. We also pay to be on a few radio stations, like paid programming, so that we can reach people that aren't just going to find us online. We can reach people where they're at. That costs money. We have to pay for a union-made website. That costs money. So, all of this, there are a lot of expenses that go into the running of this project. And so if you think that it's valuable, you think that it is worth seeing this continue, and I hope you do. If you are able, I would very much request that you support the show if you're able, because we cannot do it. We can't do it. We just simply can't do it without monetary support. So that's really important. If you want to support us on a one-time basis, you can also do that if there's a particular segment or interview or reporting that we did that you feel like was really good. You can go to tvlr.fm/donate. Just make a one-time donation. If you want to become a monthly donor, you can set up auto pay for recurring donations. You can also buy our merch at tvlr.fm/store. We had a new merch item just drop yesterday, so you're going to want to check that out. People have been asking for a long time. Hey, when are you going to drop the new another order of the Join a Union t-shirts? And folks, I can tell you that yesterday we did it. Pre-orders are open again. We got a new redesign. I think it looks better, actually. I think it looks better. The shirts are going to be better quality, actually. We are now going with a new manufacturer, American Roots. And I'm wearing another one of our shirts that we have done with them in the past. And you can't really tell from the video, but it's much softer than the Join a Union t-shirt that we put out almost a year ago to the day, actually, because it came up in my Facebook memories. So we put out the old one, the last run, about a year ago to the date, and so we're doing another design. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth it. It's obviously, again, 100% union made, 100% American materials, and the design was done in-house and with artists that we paid. So really cool thing. You can see that tvlr.fm/store. Get your order in there. We're only going to keep orders up through the middle of August, and then so you should hopefully see those shirts in the middle of September. Also, if you're a member of a union, then think about getting your local to sponsor the show. Our listeners are the largest single source of funding that we get, but we absolutely could not do it without our union sponsors. So please do, if you're a member of a union, consider bringing it up at your next monthly meeting. Hey, I think we as a union should donate, X amount of money to the show. I think that we should add it to our budget annually to donate so much a month, $100, $200 a month. That is really, really helpful. We could not do it without them, and we are coming into like a budget crunch right now. There are some people that some sponsors that are a little bit late. Some sponsors that have some people that have said they're going to come on as a sponsor that haven't actually yet, and so we're running a little tight right now. So anything that your union organization business could do to support, we would very much appreciate it.
Absolutely, and we're happy to speak to your group or your union. We're happy to come to a meeting and talk about it if that will help. Just let us know. Anything we can do to collaborate. That's what we're all about. And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program today belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the big thing that we've got today is we're going to be going over some history of the 1997 UPS strike. That is really important for understanding where we are today. But we are it's going to be a little while before we can get to that. We are going to be doing that in overtime, actually. So if you're listening to us on the radio and you're interested in learning more about the 1997 UPS strike, then find us online, Facebook or YouTube. And we're going to be talking to Teddy Ostrow. He is a freelance reporter and host of The Upsurge, which is a podcast specifically about the contract negotiations between UPS and the Teamsters in 2023. And he's also doing some excellent work contextualizing some of the fights that they are going through today and how they're similar to the past, what's different, what's the same, and how people are organizing not only for a union but for a fighting union. So really cool stuff. Really looking forward to that conversation, but that's going to happen in overtime. So find us on YouTube, Facebook, and we're going to be talking to him at about 11:30, Lord willing, if nothing happens, and we should be good, but as long as he doesn't get caught on a train or something. He is attending actually a rally in New York today where the labor Seans are coming together. Sean Fain of the UAW and Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters are doing a rally together in New York, and he is present at the rally right now. It's actually happening right now, reporting on it for the Upsurge and In These Times and the Real News Network. So really excited about that. Appreciate everybody watching us on YouTube. 32 people watching, 13 likes. Let's see if we can get those numbers up. And people in the chat, appreciate you. Infinite Content says, I'll be back at 10:27. Already shared the link. Thank you. YouTube Censorship says that they tossed packages for years as a Teamster. Very, very cool. Spooky Wolf says, I found this podcast yesterday. Very happy someone is giving us rank and file Teamsters a way to tell our story, and very happy that that we're able to provide that platform and able to listen. We're really enjoying those conversations. Will Pina, good morning. 97 strike veteran right here. Very cool. Boogie 1923, I need the name of this song, this version of it, please. I freaking love the show. 519 Teamster. The song is Which Side Are You On? The vocals are done by the author of the song, Florence Reese, at a UMWA convention, but all the back stuff was done by Jules Taylor, and we commissioned it, actually. We commissioned the song. And so there is no standalone version of this song out there, but we do at some point. We want to put out something where we can just give it, because we've been getting a lot of requests for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do need to drop just a standalone, like a music video, perhaps with that song. I think folks would be into it.
Yeah, absolutely. G Sizzle Rips, I'm UAW, and our grievance procedure allows the corporation and the IUAW to keep us out of work for years. How is that timely manner? When we approach our leaders to have that change in the CBA to a direct time frame, the UAW leaders want nothing to do with that. Think about that. They discipline anyone who tries to stand up for workers' rights. And I do think that there's been a lot of issues with the UAW's leadership over the past few decades, and my understanding from the outside is that has changed a lot, and so hopefully you're going to be able to see some of those issues addressed in these contract negotiations. We're going to be talking about that some later in the show.
And I would just encourage you to be persistent in resolving the issue. Sometimes our unions break our hearts, and that's the reality of being a union member. But do not give up on your rights and defending and advocating for yourself, and just continue to persist into the next level and to the next level and to the next level. If that's what what it takes, and continue to build relationships and build allies to help you in that struggle.
Absolutely. Will, with a $20 super chat, I really appreciate the episode. United then in 97 and united in 2023. Really appreciate that. That goes a long way. Infinite Content says we're almost at 5,000 subscribers, and indeed we are. Isn't that crazy? 4.58 thousand subscribers. That's wild. Okay, so got through all the chats. Let's go ahead and get to the main get to some of the stuff that we wanted to start the show out with today, and that is Boss Watch. I think we're going to make this a regular segment on the show, Boss Watch, or Bosses Behaving Badly. Don't think we've come up with a name for it, but we want to do like a whole intro music and everything. We want to do the whole shebang. We don't have it ready yet, but we do have stories ready for you. And the reason for this is that, look, we are bombarded every night on the local news with stories about poor and working folk creating various crimes or committing various crimes. Allegedly, right? We get these mugshots, and people haven't even been convicted yet. And some of these people are acquitted. Some of these people, the charges are dropped. And you never actually get that follow-up story, but they do have that mugshot of them on the internet forever with that article. And some people have actually not been hired because of stuff like that. But that's what, we get stuff like that every single night on the nightly news, shoplifting, stuff like this. And this is not to excuse that, but it is important to understand things in their proper context, because the reality is that bosses steal more from workers than all other property crime combined. Okay, let that sink in. Bosses, corporations take more from working people in wage theft than all other property crime combined. Workers die on the job at almost the same rate as they are killed. And in some states, the rate is actually higher. I looked this up this morning. The on-the-job fatality rate in Alabama is 5.5 per 100,000. And the murder rate in Alabama is 6.2. Okay? So every time you see a murderer, their mugshot, which is obviously okay, we should know about murderers in our community. I don't have an issue with that necessarily. But every time you see a murderer's mugshot, you should see a boss's mugshot. Because that's happening at the same rate here in the state of Alabama. Okay, so let's go through these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories for you today. All of these in the last week. Crazy. So let's start here in Alabama. Hutchins Food Group to pay $50,000 to settle an EEOC sexual harassment lawsuit. Hutchins Food Group, owner and operator Pick and Save grocery stores in several states and headquartered in Bowling Green, Kentucky, has agreed to pay $50,000 and other relief to settle a sexual harassment lawsuit filed by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the federal agency announced today. This is from their press release. According to the EEOC's lawsuit, Hutchins Food Group subjected female employees at the Pick and Save grocery store in Evergreen, Alabama, to frequent, unwelcome sexual touching by a regular customer of the store for several years. I mean, every word of this is just continuing to get worse. How do you allow somebody to come in and touch your employees for years and not doing anything about it? It's insane. And it's going to continue to get worse, if you can imagine that. Although female employees repeatedly complained to store supervisors, the company failed to take prompt corrective action to prevent or stop the harassment. After repeated complaints went unheeded on June 5th, 2020, one female employee called the police, who came to the store and issued the customer a trespass notice signed by the store manager. Nevertheless, the customer was still allowed to enter the store until at least September of 2020. Another 3 months, according to the lawsuit. This alleged conduct violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits a hostile environment based on sexual harassment in the workplace. The EEOC filed suit in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Alabama after it completed an investigation. The 4-year consent decree resolving the lawsuit requires Hutchins Food Group to pay $50,000 to one victim of the harassment, and the company will develop or revise policies and procedures to prevent and correct sexual harassment. The company is also required to conduct annual training for employees and managers in its Evergreen store and 15 other stores in Alabama to ensure compliance with these policies and the law, and the EEOC will be monitoring the company's compliance for the duration of the decree. Crazy stuff. Years of sexual harassment. Really not good. Not good
totally
at all.
Ridiculous.
Okay, let's head over to Missouri, where the U.S. Department of Labor proposes $393,000 in fines after follow-up inspections find Verona, Missouri chemical plant continuing to endanger workers. The BCP ingredients were cited for 16 additional violations after 24 violations were issued in 2021. Less than 2 years after an investigation found dozens of serious safety and health violations at a Verona chemical plant, workplace safety inspectors with the U.S. Department of Labor identified 16 more violations, including those that put employees at risk of exposure to toxic substances such as ethylene oxide. After its January 2023 follow-up inspection, the department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued 4 repeat, 9 serious safety and health violations and proposed $393,798 in penalties to BCP Ingredients Incorporated, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Balcham Corporation. The agency also issued a hazard letter for inadequate medical evaluation procedures for workers exposed to ethylene oxide. In October 2021, OSHA cited the same facility for 24 serious safety and health violations. So here's specifically what they cited them for: inadequate process safety management procedures and monitoring, failing to develop an emergency evacuation plan, failing to train workers on actions to take in the event of a chemical release, exposing respirators to ethylene oxide while in storage. I mean, can you imagine, like, this is the respirator, like that's the thing that you put on to protect yourself from these gases, and they're being stored inside the gases. It's crazy. Allowing electrical safety hazards. The company has 15 days from receipt of these citations and penalties to comply, request an informal conference with OSHA's area director, or contest the findings before the Independent Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission. All right, there's another one in Missouri. Here's another bad boss in Missouri. Federal inspectors found sawmill exposed employee to the same unguarded saw that claimed the life of a 21-year-old worker only weeks earlier. Missouri Mats owner Don Gibson defied a January OSHA directive to guard a saw. Not yet a month on the job, here's what happened. Not yet a month on the job, a 21-year-old working at a sawmill operation in Brashear was learning how to operate a hurdle saw on January 11th, 2023, when he suffered fatal injuries after getting caught and pulled into the vertical edger blades as they spun. His employer, Don Gibson, owner of Missouri Mats, failed to notify the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration that the fatality occurred. Somebody died, and he was like, "Nah, I'm just not gonna report it to OSHA, even though that's the law."
Wow.
That delayed OSHA's investigation of the incident until January 18th, 2023, and when investigators arrived at the work site, they issued Gibson a letter that required the company to protect employees from amputation hazards. I mean, that's a really, that's so strenuous. This red tape that businesses have to go through to protect their employees from having their limbs cut off. I mean, just really unreasonable, seems to me. The letter also directed Gibson to report to OSHA that the mill had corrected the hazard. Just weeks later, like 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks later, OSHA inspectors returned on March the 1st, 2023, to continue their investigation, and when they returned, they discovered that Gibson failed to implement necessary controls and procedures for the sawmill, and that his employees continued to operate the saw in the same condition that resulted in the death of his employee. The agency placed an imminent danger notice on the saw, which finally prompted Gibson to correct the sawmill's safety failure. This is not just, I'm going into a workplace that is a little bit loud. I need to put some, earpieces in, which that's serious. You do need to put earpieces in because hearing loss and tinnitus, and this is all serious stuff. But it's not something like that. It's not something like, these are not trivial matters. This is something that can kill somebody and literally killed somebody less than 2 months ago, and the boss still had not implemented any of the changes that he was ordered to by the government. Just a total lack of respect for human life, but he's not going to get arrested. You're not going to see his face on the local news behind bars. You're not going to see a local news segment talking about, there's crime in our community. He's violating the law. This guy's violating the law and killing people. But you're not going to get a segment like that on local news. I mean, that's crazy. Inspectors also learned that the company knew that sawmill operators let the vertical edger continue to spin while they were inspecting the machine. This edger is large enough to cut full logs, but they did not correct the procedure or retrain workers on how to use the machine safely. So as a result of all of this, OSHA cited the company for 2 willful, 53 serious, and 2 other than serious safety and health violations and proposed $346,954 in penalties. OSHA also placed the company in its severe violator enforcement program. While at Missouri Mats, the agency's investigators also observed workers under the age of 18 employed at the sawmill and operating heavy-powered industrial trucks, and alerted the department's wage and hour division. Federal law, in case you didn't know, prohibits minors from working in hazardous occupations. I mean, just really, really crazy stuff. So here's specifically what investigators identified and cited the person for. Saw blades, pulleys, belts, woodworking machines, and grinding wheels without machine guards. Inadequate lockout, tagout procedures to isolate energy during service maintenance. The company also failed to establish and follow proper procedures for controlling hazardous energy, exposing employees walking and working on surfaces and near unguarded holes to fall hazards, failing to provide required guardrails, insufficient training and evaluation of operators of powered industrial vehicles, failing to maintain portable fire extinguishers and not having a work training program on their use, exposing workers to the risk of electrical hazards, allowing improper use of ladders, lacking a hearing conservation program, failing to provide personal protective equipment for eyes, face, head, and feet, not labeling chemicals as required, improperly storing cylinders and equipment, failing to provide required safety information and training to employees. And I mean, it just keeps going. If that's not enough, these incidents are not even the first time that this company has failed to comply with federal workplace safety and health laws. In 2012, OSHA investigated another fatality, at a logging site operated by Don Gibson, as well as a sawmill owned by Gibson in Arbella, Missouri. The company has 15 days from receipt of the citations and penalties to comply. Not going to see his mugshot.
Right.
Let's head over to North Carolina, where the Department of Labor recovers $119,000 in back wages for 72 workers after North Carolina home care employer misclassifies them as contractors. The investigation found that the provider of day and overnight home health care to the sick and elderly in the Wilson, North Carolina area misclassified employees as independent contractors and paid them straight time rates for all hours worked. By doing so, the employer did not pay the affected workers their additional half-time premium rate for overtime hours over 40 in a work week, which is a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. In addition, the employer failed to keep accurate pay records. On background, from 2020 to 2022, the Wage and Hour Division investigators identified violations in nearly 90%. 90% of the more than 1,200 home care and nursing care investigations. These reviews led the agency to recover more than $16.2 million in back wages and liquidated damages for more than 13,000 workers. In addition, the division assessed employers a total of $156,404 in civil money penalties. Crazy stuff. We've got one more. Let's talk about Dollar General in Tampa, Florida. This is the last story in Boss Watch, and then we're going to go to a break. The Department of Labor finds Dollar General continues to endanger workers as inspectors cite 8 violations at Tampa stores, proposed $342,000 in penalties, and on background, the national discount retailer has faced more than $21 million in proposed penalties just since 2017. So this story, federal workplace safety inspections at 2 Tampa area Dollar General stores found that the company was again exposing employees to fire hazards and other unsafe conditions. continuing the long history of disregard for worker safety by one of the nation's largest discount retailers. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued citations for 2 repeat violations after a January 18, 2023 inspection at a Brandon store which identified exit routes blocked and electrical hazards. Inspectors also found the store did not have a working employee restroom and left another restroom sewer drain uncovered, which created a trip hazard, and no doubt smelled great. 2 days later, in Dade City, Florida, OSHA inspectors found an emergency exit blocked by rolling containers and merchandise, which exposed the workers to fire and entrapment hazards. After these inspections, OSHA issued citations to Dollar General Corporation for 3 repeat, 2 serious, and 3 other than serious violations and proposed penalties of $342,282. Since 2018, the company has faced more than $21 million in fines after more than 243 inspections nationwide. Between February 1st, 2022 and April 20th, 2023, in Alabama, Florida, and Georgia alone, inspectors assessed Dollar General nearly $10 million in proposed fines after more than 30 investigations. And you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. $10 million in a year, $21 million in 6 years. How is Dollar General going to afford that? Is the government going to put Dollar General out of business? Is OSHA really just kind of being too much here?
Are they?
Are they? In just the last year alone, okay, have that number in your mind, $21 million for all this over the last 6 years. In the last year alone, Dollar General made more than $3.3 billion in profits.
Oh.
Huh. So $21 million out of 3.3, that's just 1 year, and these are over 6 years. These are 6 years of violations, and that's 1 year of profits. What is 21 million divided by $3.3 billion in profit? I don't know, but it's not a lot, is the answer. That's not a lot. But I'm sure they're gonna change, surely. After more than 200 failed inspections, Dollar General cannot claim that they misunderstood federal safety requirements, said OSHA Area Director Danelle Gendra in Tampa, Florida. Yeah, obviously. Crazy stuff there. But you know, the capitalist class are betters. They run society, actually, is what I'm told. They're the job creators. They make society run. And they're just, I mean, you know, they're just so good. That's what I'm always told. So, yeah, there we go. That's Boss Watch. So we're gonna be doing that, I think, pretty regularly. And you know, in the chat, there's a lot of people that are rightly, you know, surprised. Wage theft accounts for about $50 billion a year in the U.S., says Infinite Content. Pretty sure that is that's from a study from the Economic Policy Institute. Yeah, really crazy stuff. Ron M says, no apologies for stealing from the boss, but why is it that when a boss deliberately steals from your paycheck, there is no chance they'll ever see the inside of a jail? That's because the bosses, you know, they created the laws. They bought the politicians, is the long and short of it. G Sizzle Rip says, your safety is our top priority, LOL. Company jargon we all know is just BS. Indeed. Yeah. Let's go ahead and go to a break, and we're going to be right back. We're going to talk about the actor strike. There's a lot of good stuff coming out, a lot of good clips that we're going to have for you. Fran Drescher is really doing a great job on the picket line and in her press conference a couple of days ago. So we're going to play a couple of clips from that and talk about some of the reasons for this actors strike and weave it into what's going on with the writers strike as well. So don't go anywhere, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR if you want to call in. Be right back.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the healthcare coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
The sign hit the city like a bolt of lightning.
You know the photo. It's iconic. Marches in the streets, holding a simple sign with a simple message.
I am a man.
The I Am Story podcast explores the fight that inspired those words, how a group of sanitation workers in Memphis stood up and made history.
They don't see us as men and women.
Go to iamstory.com or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law.
You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law.
And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law, the name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call or send us a text message. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. So we have a new shirt, like I said at the top of the show. It is really, really cool. Take a look at this. I don't know if is that backwards, Adam?
No, it's
you can read it.
I think so.
You can. I think I'm not sure how y'all are seeing that. If it's no, it looks like I'm looking at the I'm looking at the stream now. Look at that. That's what you can buy on our website, tvlr.fm/store. For people that are just listening to us on the podcast or on the radio. People just listening to us as a podcast or on the radio, you can check out our website, tvlr.fm/store, where we have a new shirt it's a riff on the Go to Church billboard. If you live in Alabama or you have been in Alabama for any length of time, you have seen the Go to Church billboard on
I-65, driving south. So if you've ever driven south of Montgomery, heading towards the beach or whatever, or that drive south, it's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. It says, go to church or the devil will get you. It's a very cool billboard. And so we riffed on it. We changed the devil to a boss with horns and a tail. And we have it saying, join a union or the boss will get you, which is verifiably true, actually. The spiritual claims are a bit, kind of up in the air, but but our claims are material and verifiable. So make sure that you get that. Really good. It's a really cool shirt. I'm looking forward to getting it in. And I think the design is a little bit better. It's a little more streamlined. And also, like I said, the shirt is better. The shirt
right. Yeah. Happy to be working with American Roots, and of course they are represented by the United Steelworkers. So definitely looking forward to getting that out there. Y'all check it out. I think you'll like it.
Yeah. So, hey, we appreciate everybody watching the show. We got 60 people watching right now, about 60 people. We've been going between 50 and 70, which is a little bit more than we usually get. So we appreciate all the new listeners. Wanted to take just a quick second to introduce ourselves. I've said already, my name is Jacob Morrison. Adam Keller is on the other side of the screen from me right now. I'm a worker. I'm a member of the American Federation of Government Employees. I'm an assistant vice president of my union, Local 1858, which is basically what we call our stewards. I have been a member of the union for like 5 years. Also, secretary-treasurer of the Labor Council here in North Alabama. Secretary-Treasurer of the Labor Council in North Alabama. The Labor Council is like the regional federation of unions, which is a very important body, I think, very important for unifying the labor movement's voice. And, the Labor Council is important kind of politically and socially for the same reason that unions are important on the job, which is that, the more of us band together, the more effective we are, right? Really, I'm honored that delegates to the Labor Council representing thousands of workers in the area have elected me twice to be Secretary-Treasurer. And we started this radio show 3 years ago. I started it with David Story, who was then the president of the Machinists Union in Decatur, to talk about unions and the good that they can do for working people, how they can, how to form one, educate people on just what they are, how to be an effective member, and also talk about, current events from a working class perspective, from people who are members of the working class, who this stuff affects, and who are who can see the way that this affects working people from kind of a collective standpoint, and cut through a lot of the noise that we see on mainstream media, on right-wing talk radio. And so we've been doing this for like 3 years, and we've been growing steadily. We appreciate everybody that listens and watches and participates in the chats and donates. It means a lot, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to continue doing it for several years to come. And if you think that my background in labor work is extensive and lengthy, wait till you hear Adam's.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far, but I appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Adam Keller. I really am excited to be part of this project, and have enjoyed being part of this project for the last 2 years. I got my start as a high school history teacher, and got very involved as a teacher because it didn't take long to realize that neither my colleagues and I or our students were being done right. And so I began organizing. And I just felt this calling, I felt this push, this urge that we need to do something, that a better world is possible, but only if we fight for it, that we actually have to try to make things better. And I've just always had that belief, or at least, throughout my adult life. And so my work as a high school history teacher brought me into work as a field staffer for the Alabama Education Association. I did that for over 5 years, representing about 1,500 workers in the Huntsville City School District, where I fought against corporate education reform and privatization, and did my best to organize workers in the education sector against those forces. And, I also saw some of the downsides of institutions that are, at least ostensibly part of our movement. Certainly experienced that, and that's a story for another day. But in the last few years, what I've been doing, I've been working as a union stagehand with IATSE Local 900, and I've really enjoyed getting to work with these brothers and sisters. It's a fun job doing the production at the Orion, at the VBC, putting together these concerts and plays and just, amazing live entertainment for folks. But working in a union team environment with my comrades there, where we look out for one another and we take care of one another, and it's a great environment. So much love to IATSE 900, where I serve as the political coordinator, also a delegate to the North Alabama Labor Council that Jacob mentioned, and Jacob didn't mention that he played an instrumental role in getting that restarted, which I think has been huge. And so, during my time with AEA, I was involved with the staff union. I was a member of the bargaining team, executive board member. So I've been a union member, I've been a union officer, I've been a union staffer. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. What motivates me is a desire to organize the working class. And I think that why I participate with the Valley Labor Report is because we are trying to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. Starting right here in North Alabama. And by doing so, by building independent media that is of and by and for working people, we can actually begin to strengthen this labor movement. And by strengthening this labor movement, by building solidarity with our coworkers and building power at the shop floor, we can begin to actually build progress in the broader society. And that's what I'd like to see. I think a better Alabama is possible. I think a better country is possible. And I think the best way we get there is through organizing our working class and building our power as a working class movement. And so that's why I do what I do. And I really appreciate all the folks who have been supportive of this project as we try to spread the gospel of solidarity and collective organization and the power that comes from organizing with your fellow workers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can tell, not trained media professionals, not journalists necessarily by trade.
Right.
We do this on the side, and so, but I like to think that we do a pretty good job. I'm pretty proud of the work that we put out, and what we're able to do here on a pretty shoestring budget.
We've worked with some really amazing people. We've had some great guests. So if you are new, check out our back catalog. There's some guests there. I guarantee you will find something that interests you, something that you'll enjoy. We've talked to rank and file workers, union officers and leaders and organizers, community activists, political candidates, scholars and journalists. We've talked to a lot of different types of folks. We've tried to elevate voices that are important. We've tried to respond to some of the nonsense that we're exposed to as working people on a regular basis, but all with the intent that we educate, we agitate, and we organize.
Yeah. So with that introduction, let's go ahead and talk about the actors' strike.
Absolutely.
Really big deal. 160,000 actors went on strike at midnight last Thursday after the studios refused to meet them where they needed to be met. And I want to underline as we open this topic that, when people think actor, they think of people like the current president of the union, Fran Drescher, or they think about Meryl Streep or George Clooney, people like this that that are wealthy. They got wealthy from their labor as opposed to parasitically leeching off of the value that other people create by being an owner. But they are wealthy, and so that is kind of the quintessential. That is the archetypal actor. When you think about actor, you only, and it makes sense because these are the only people really that you're exposed to regularly, is the people who have been wildly successful. But that is not the majority of this union. That's not even a strong minority of the union. Think about the number that I just said, 160,000 people. 160,000 people. There are simply not 160,000 Meryl Streeps, right? Most of these people are working actors making, probably, in fact, less than a lot of the audience makes. Because the work that they do is infrequent, kind of scattershot. And so it's really precarious being a working actor. And so we're not talking about people that are making millions and wanting to make tens of millions. We're talking about working folks who don't just want, who need their compensation to keep up with the cost of living increases, who need to keep up with inflation, and that need to have work secured for them in the future in the face of threats of theft of their intellectual property by artificial intelligence, and other things. And so, that's not to say that anybody can become an actor with a sustainable livelihood, even under the good old days, right? Even under the good old days, or if they win everything that they're fighting for. This is not to say that everybody can be a middle-class actor and make a sustainable living, because by their nature, in entertainment industries are highly competitive because a lot of people want to do that. But there is plenty of money out there to make this a real livelihood for so many that the companies just want to take away. They just want to take away their livelihood for no reason, or because they want more profits. And the people that would suffer the most from this is, of course, the actors, but also consumers who will be deprived of actors that could have come up and could have been stars if they had been given the opportunity, if they had been able to make a living while they were waiting for their big break, right? Think about how many people could be, but that could be a good actor, but their environment precludes them from being able to because they just don't make a good enough living, or they haven't had the opportunities. And so the more you decrease compensation for actors, the more it is actually going to become a rich person's profession, because the only people that could afford to only be paid $5,000, $10,000 a year while they're waiting for their big break is people who are wealthy, whose parents are wealthy from something else. And so if we want acting and entertainment to be a career that working people can actually achieve, we have to make it a sustainable career, and that's something the studios are wanting to take that away. And so the president of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher, who many of you are going to know from her hit show in the 90s, The Nanny, she gave a really passionate speech as the strike was announced, and she started off, as so many people do when they're announcing a strike, talking about how this is absolutely not what they wanted. The negotiating committee, the union, even the rank and file, they did not go into this saying, I'm going to strike come hell or high water. They can offer us the best deal that I could think of, and I want to go on strike just because I want to show it to these people. That's not how this union or any union, frankly, goes into negotiations. Because strikes are difficult on both parties. And if they can at all be avoided, People want to avoid them. And so so President Drescher, she spoke to that as she opened her statements. Let's listen to this.
I went in earnest, thinking that we would be able to avert a strike. The gravity of this move is not lost on me or our negotiating committee or our board members who have voted unanimously to proceed with a strike. It's a very serious thing that impacts thousands, if not millions of people all across this country and around the world. Not only members of this union, but people who work in other industries that service the people that work in this industry. And so it came with great sadness that we came to this crossroads, but we had no choice. We are the victims here. We are being victimized by a very greedy entity. I am shocked by the way the people that we have been in business with are treating us. I cannot believe it, quite frankly. How far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history at this very moment.
So that was Fran Drescher, president of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA. I'm forgetting what AFTRA stands for, but a friend of the show, Flash Ferentz, could tell you. He was part of the radio union before it merged with SAG to become SAG-AFTRA. And so, you know, really, you know, passionate and an important way to frame the conversation that they understand that this is going to be difficult not only for them, the people who are making the decision, but also people in the rest of the broader economy, right? So it is, you know, it is really sad that they are being made to do this by these companies. But it's also important to understand that that is the reality, that they're being forced into this position by the companies. And that's not something that you're going to see on you know, in the media. And in fact, President Drescher was asked a few times about in multiple places about, you know, aren't you worried about the impact this is going to have on other people? And you know, the person who they need to be asking that to is the CEOs of these studios.
Right.
Not the representative of 160,000 working actors. But, you know, Bob Iger's not going to be asked that question. We're going to talk about Bob Iger here in a little bit. Here's a little bit of some historical trivia. The actors going on strike at the same time as the writers, that is a very big deal, and it's actually the first time that that's happened since who was the president of SAG-AFTRA? Adam, do you know?
Since who was the president of SAG-AFTRA?
Who was the president of SAG-AFTRA the last time the actors and the writers were on strike together?
Wow. Gosh, I know it's been more than half a century, so I'm not really sure who was the president at that time. The only, you know, my mind went to Boris Karloff, but he was probably that was before his.
No, Ronald Reagan.
Oh my God, no!
Ronald Reagan led
Really?
SAG-AFTRA into a strike with the writers. Actually, he was at the head. Some people say that James Garner, the executive vice president, did all the work, wrote all the speeches. I would not doubt that.
I would not either.
But which would also make sense because, you know, the way that, you know, for you to be able to shift so quickly from leading a historic strike, quote unquote, a historic strike, to being the most anti-union president in half a century. The only way you could do that is if you really have no kind of guiding compass and you're just like reading scripts. What
oh, absolutely. Yeah, he had been on the take for a long time by that point.
So immediately after that, and immediately after the union won a lot for those actors, he began working for GE to talk about how, how unions are bad. He also worked for the American Medical Association, talking about how it would be bad if every American had health insurance. Just a real. I was about to say freak. My wife doesn't like it when I say freak. She says that's not a good word. So a real bad guy. Bad guy. The strike is also historic for having been the biggest strike vote in the union's history, the highest percentage of people voting in favor. And President Drescher spoke to some of those issues that are at stake here that make it unique, but also the same as everything else that's going on in labor right now. Let's listen to that clip.
We are fortunate enough to be in a country right now that happens to be labor friendly. And yet we were facing opposition that was so labor unfriendly, so tone deaf to what we are saying. You cannot change the business model as much as it has changed and not expect the contract to change too. We're not going to keep doing incremental changes on a contract that no longer honors what is happening right now with this business model that was foisted upon us. What are we doing? Moving around furniture on the Titanic? It's crazy. So the jig is up, AMPTP. We stand tall. You have to wake up and smell the coffee. We are labor and we stand tall and we demand respect and to be honored for our contribution. You share the wealth because you cannot exist without us. Thank you.
That's exactly right. And, some of the stuff that she spoke to, like I said, is specific to actors, artificial intelligence, residuals, streaming services, how that has upended the industry. But the crux of it is the same, as she laid out at the beginning of her speech. The crux of it is really the same as any of these other stories at UPS, at at the Big Three with the UAW. Any of these, the crux is you've got these people at the very top who are not actually creating the value for the company, who are taking all of the money for themselves. A lot of these people, the shareholders, the executive, the CEO, you could say there is potentially some work that a CEO does. There's a role for an administrative person at the top of the company. But the CEOs or the shareholders, they literally don't do anything, right? They just have money and make money because of that. And they want to take more of the value that we create for themselves. And that's the crux of it. That's the crux of it. Whether it's the actors, the writers, UPS drivers, GM workers, all of it, it's the same. These people who are sitting on piles of money want to steal more from us. So that's really the gist of it. So obviously, all solidarity to the actors and the writers, and we're going to continue to cover the story. And we're going to continue covering it actually right now because, like I mentioned earlier, the actors, they're not the only ones on strike. And Bob Iger, the CEO at Disney, was asked about the labor strife with both of these workforces in an interview on CNBC that was really, just so gross. They spent about 2 minutes on the largest entertainment labor action in decades out of a 40-minute interview, the rest of which was more or less fellatio. Aren't you so smart? Aren't you such an effective parasite? Aren't you so, wow, you're so great, Mr. Iger. You're so inspiring. Just really, gross. But let's actually take a look at the entire 2 minutes where anything of relevance was talked about and react to this. And Adam, you may want to be prepared because there's going to be a couple of places that I'm going to want to stop.
Copy that. We're in the midst of a writer's strike, and very likely it would seem to have a actors' strike. How is that going to impact things, and what are your expectations there?
Well, I think it's very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the challenges that we're facing and the recovery from COVID, which is ongoing. It's not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add to that disruption.
Okay, stop it right there. Then pay them, you absolute parasitic ghoul. If it's so bad of a time for this to happen, you have the power to make it not happen. Just pay the actors, pay the writers. Take a little bit less money for yourself and your shareholder friends. Okay, let's continue.
I understand any labor organization's desire to work on the behalf of its members to get the most compensation, to be compensated fairly based on the value that they deliver. We managed as an industry to negotiate a very good deal with the Directors Guild that reflects the value that the directors contribute to this great business. We wanted to do the same thing with the writers, and we'd like to do the same thing with the actors. There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic. And they are...
We'll stop right there. Just not realistic. This guy's getting millions, tens of millions of dollars a year. And we're gonna play this clip from Adam Conover in a bit. But he's talking in like he got there on a private jet. He's at a billionaire retreat with all of these other parasites, Mark Zuckerberg, all these people. But he's talking about these people wanting to be able to pay their rent. They're not being realistic, wanting to pay their rent.
Right.
Yeah.
Trying to survive, feed their families.
Let's keep going.
Adding to a set of challenges that this business is already facing that is, quite frankly, very disruptive.
So they're not being realistic?
No, they're not.
Why not?
I can't answer that question. I respect their right and their desire to get as much as they possibly can in compensation for their people. I completely respect that. I've been around long enough to understand that dynamic and to appreciate it. But you also have to be realistic about it with the business environment and what this business can deliver. It is and has been a great business for all of these people, and it will continue to be, even through disruptive times. But, being realistic is imperative.
What do you do in the interim then? Does AI start to write a lot of scripts?
It will have a very, very damaging effect on the whole business, and unfortunately,
the strike will.
There's huge collateral damage in the industry to people who are, who are support services. I could go on and on. It will affect the economy of, different regions even because of just the sheer size of the business. It's a shame. It is really a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame, and it's. People like him, it's their fault.
Right. You can totally end this. If you're so concerned about the collateral damage, quote unquote, of this strike, we'll settle it.
Yeah.
Settle it with a fair contract for the people who actually create the value in which you profit from.
He wasn't the only executive to make ghoulish remarks about the strike. There was another one who was quoted anonymously, I believe.
That's right.
Who said that, they're really fine. It's not a big deal. They're just going to wait for these people to become homeless, the writers and actors to become homeless. Quote, the end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their homes. That's what these people want to happen. Right? That's the end game.
Totally disgusting.
Them. Yeah. Just a symphony of evil things coming from these types of people.
Right. And I want you to think about whose side are you on in this situation, and who really who do you have more in common with?
Yeah.
Mr. Iger or these workers who are trying to just scrape together a living.
Right. So Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, multi-hundred millionaire, maybe a billionaire potentially, I'm not sure. Those comments were made before the actors' strike began. Obviously, during the actors' strike, it's now 3 or 4 months long. But Fran Drescher was asked about those comments after the strike began, while I think she was on the picket line, and here's the response that she gave to a reporter.
Comments yesterday.
I found them terribly repugnant and out of touch, positively tone deaf. And, I don't think it served him well. If I were that company, I would lock him behind doors and never let him talk to anybody about this, because it's so obvious that he has no clue as to what is really happening on the ground with hardworking people that don't make anywhere near the salary that he's making. High 7 figures, 8 figures. It's like, this is crazy money that they make, and they don't care. They're like land barons of a medieval time.
What did you?
Yeah, and she's absolutely right from a PR perspective. How do you let these people continue to speak? I mean, if you are can you imagine being like a press person for these companies right now? I mean, she's totally right that the smart thing for them to do would be to tie them up and throw them in a basement for the duration of the strike. Even if just for their own good, that would be the best thing for them to do. But these people are, in addition to being, parasites and blood-sucking leeches, they're also insanely arrogant and narcissistic, and they think that they can do no wrong. So they are not going to be tied up and thrown in a basement. They're going to continue blabbering when people ask them about things. In addition to President Drescher responding, Adam Conover responded as well, also from the picket line. He is in both SAG-AFTRA and the WGA, and he is on the WGA's negotiating committee. Let's listen to Adam's response.
So this morning, the CEO of Disney went on TV and said that what writers and actors are asking for is not realistic because they just don't have enough money to pay us. But he said this at a billionaire retreat where he was hanging out with Mark Zuckerberg and David Zaslav that they all flew to on their private jets. And you know what? I don't think that that's realistic. Here's a dose of reality for you, Bob. Writers cannot afford to pay their mortgages. Actors are not able to make a living in Los Angeles anymore. That is reality to us, not flying around on private jets. And until you accept that reality, we are going to be out here on the picket lines, withholding our labor, depriving you of your product, and you will not make another dollar off of us until you come back to the table and face reality and negotiate with us as you have refused to do. And until you do that, there will be no acting and no writing.
Powerful words, great stuff, as always, from Adam Conover. Exactly right. Nothing really to add. And so since I don't have anything to add, I've got one more person involved in this strike that had a response to some of these comments. And this one was in particular responding to the anonymous studio executive who said that they want to make people homeless. Let's hear what Ron Perlman said.
But I will say one thing before I get off this. The mother who said we're going to keep this thing going until people start losing their houses and their apartments. Listen to me. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. Some of it is financial, some of it is karma, and some of it is just figuring out who the said that. And we know who said that. And where he lives. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. You wish that on people. You wish that families starve while you're making $27 million a year for creating nothing. Be careful, mother. Be really careful. Because that's the kind of that stirs shit up. Peace out.
I did not realize how much cursing there was in that video. Ben was right that he did have to bleep out like half the video. But yeah,
a lot of editing on that one.
A lot of editing on our part on that one. That was Ron Perlman.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Good stuff. So with that, let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to respond to some of this stuff in the chat. Max Alvarez actually got it right. He knew that it was Reagan that was the president during the last actor strike that was coincided with the writers. We got a $4.99 super chat from Reckoning Collective Media that said a WDRB news host just claimed during the strike of the 90s, drivers were, quote, proud of the scab work their managers did. Dumber than the 35 an hour claim. It sounds pretty dumb, for sure. Del Real 1040. I'm a UPS driver. I really appreciate your channel, man. Keep up the great work. We're going to come out on top. Local 639. Thank you for your support. Hustler of Culture, but Ad Asner was head for a while there. No, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not really familiar with the history of the presidents of SAG-AFTRA. Will says the devil, Ronald Reagan, and that's correct. Ronald Reagan's the devil.
Glad Reagan did.
And let's see here. Some other stuff. Brandon says, I stand with Fran. She is my Khaleesi. What's a Khaleesi?
I think it's a reference to, what is it, Game of Thrones, perhaps? I don't know. Reference to a show I didn't watch.
Okay.
How about that?
Tristan says, y'all need to get Conover on the show or get a spot on his. He might come on the show, actually. We need to send him an invite.
Not a bad idea.
Devastator Omega says it's not anonymous anymore. It was the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, who makes $27 million. Just recently, Wall Street gave him a raise, making $31 million now. Is that actually, has it been confirmed that Bob Iger was the one that said the stuff about making people homeless? I hadn't heard that, but maybe.
I'm not sure. That could have developed here recently. I do know those figures are accurate in terms of the salary, though.
Yes.
Because, yeah, he has just been given a bigger bonus. Yeah. He can get a bigger bonus now.
Imagine getting a bonus during a strike.
A strike that supposedly is creating such collateral damage to the industry and to the economy that is just such, folks are not being realistic. It's just totally disgusting, the amount of corporate greed on display with these studios and, of course, throughout their economy. But these studios are definitely the prime example this week of, extraordinary corporate greed that has just run amok in this country as we continually diminish ourselves into a Gilded Age kind of throwback here. And the only thing we can do to fight back against that is to organize with our fellow workers.
Yep. Let's go ahead and take our final break, and we'll be right back. We're going to do some deliberation during the break about what we want to end the show on. And, of course, if you're listening to us on the radio, find us online, YouTube, Facebook, where we are going to be continuing the show for another hour and a half after we go off the radio at 11. And we are going to talk to Teddy Ostrow at 11:30. About what's going on with UPS and the Teamsters and what happened in 1997 and what we can learn from it and why it matters for today.
Really looking forward to that.
Going to be a great conversation. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law.
You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law.
And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Do you work in an auto manufacturing plant? Are you tired of taking pride in your work without getting the respect you deserve? Consider joining the fight to unionize. Auto workers across the industry are coming together because with a union, we can negotiate for the pay, benefits, and security that we deserve and can help sustain our families. In union plants, workers bargain for long-term wage increases, competitive bonuses, and more affordable benefits. You can join the growing wave of organizing today. Find out more and contact us at Uniting Auto Workers on Facebook or contact UAW Region 8 in Lebanon, Tennessee by going to www.uawregion8.net. That's www.uawregion8.net. A better future is ours.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call or send us a text message at the phone number 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also join us on YouTube in the chat. Where we are responding, as you've seen throughout the show, to some of the comments. Richard says, I'm a package car driver at UPS Local 340 in Maine. Really like your show. Wicked information. Stand tall, brothers and sisters. Will come out on top. Solidarity. Indeed. Appreciate your support, brother Richard. We've got 87 people watching us now. 45 likes. Let's see if we can get those numbers up. If you can, like the stream.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd really appreciate it.
So
I did want to mention that this week in 1934, thousands of textile workers across northern Alabama, from Huntsville to Piedmont, went on strike, demanding better wages and safer working conditions. The mill owners had just enacted a 25% wage cut. The work stoppage was organized by local leaders, not the national leadership of the United Textile Workers. It would eventually lead to a broader strike throughout textile mills in the South and throughout the country, known as the Uprising of '34, the largest textile strike in U.S. history, involving nearly 500,000 mill workers. To learn more stories like this, check out our monthly labor history episodes on our Shop Talk series, which debuts on Thursdays on YouTube. So this past week I did July labor history, and I've got some interesting stuff planned here for the rest of the month. I think I'm going to do a deep dive on a local strike here in Alabama, so it should be good. Stay tuned for Shop Talk. Definitely check out some of our previous episodes if you've missed those. And for those of you who don't know, we do air live on WVNN, which is the right-wing talk radio station in Huntsville, Athens listening area, every Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m., with our overtime at 11 o'clock airing online only on YouTube and Facebook, and of course later as a podcast. We got our start on WVNN, which is the birthplace of Sean Hannity and home to all sorts of propaganda that we find objectionable, frankly. But we think it's important to get a different perspective out there to multiple audiences. We're happy that a portion of the show is replayed during the week on WZZA, the historic black radio station in Northwest Alabama, and on WHIV, a community radio station in New Orleans. We released the full episode on Spotify, Apple, and the various podcasting apps. So please subscribe to us on your app of choice and give us a good review. And throughout the week, clips of the show are released as standalone videos on YouTube and in some cases TikTok. So if there's a specific segment or interview you want to find, we do try to make it easy for you. Just do us a favor and hit subscribe and like. And all of our content is free. Special thanks to all of you who donate, all of you who comment and call in, and all of you who have liked us, shared us, and reviewed us. Your engagement on social media and the podcasting apps really does help, and that's a quick, easy, and free way to support the program. If you believe it's important to have our own media of, by, and for the Southern working class, please consider supporting us however you can, and please share with your coworkers, friends, family, and neighbors. We know there's a lot of good causes to support, and our audience are working folks with limited incomes. So if you find value in our project and you're willing to chip in a couple bucks, it really would mean a lot. We've got some great stuff planned as we continue to grow this project, and we can't do it without you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a caller on the line, but we don't have enough time to get to them before we head into overtime. So if you
can just stick around for us, we'll get you in overtime.
Yeah, if you stick around for about 10 more minutes or so, we will pick up your call. We really do have a great overtime planned. We're going to be talking some about the UAW beginning their negotiations. We're obviously, like I said, going to be talking to Teddy Ostrow. And we're going to be taking a look at this new thing on TikTok, apparently, Scab influencers. So we're going to take a look at that, and really excited for Adam's reaction. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I wish I had never known there was such a thing.
Oh, yeah, there is. So definitely stay tuned for overtime, folks. And as we're wrapping up here on the radio, just want to remind you, as we do every week, that our friends at Labor Notes are hosting they always host a series of online trainings. You can go to labornotes.org to see what they have right now. They are doing a Secrets of a Successful Organizer series on Wednesdays during the month of July. So that's definitely a good training to check out. From Resilience to Restoration presents a summer special Jobs and Justice Zoom webinar with Kathleen Kirkpatrick and Patricia Todd on Monday, July the 17th at 6 p.m. Central. So that's this Monday. Both of those are friend of the show, former guest, and it should be a great discussion on clean energy. And how we can make that help working class communities. Also on that Monday at 4:30 p.m. at May Jemison High School on Pulaski Pike in Huntsville, there's going to be a redistricting town hall held by Representative Anthony Daniels and Representative Laura Hall. So you may want to go check that out if you are local. Alabama Arise also has a town hall Tuesdays. They have regular town hall Tuesdays coming up on July the 18th at 6 p.m. is Building on Our Vision. You can join that session to discuss advances we made, Alabama Arise made this year, and to hear from each other about potential issues moving forward. Check out Michael Bailey and Jennifer Yarbrough's Indoor Air Care Advocates. 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 Indoor Air Care meeting on, sorry, the word just left me, meeting on Wednesday, July the 19th at Madison Public Library at 6:30 p.m. to talk about how to improve air quality on your job and in your schools. And with that, we're going to go ahead and head into overtime, folks. Really great overtime coming up, so make sure you find us on YouTube or Facebook so you can continue watching the show. And if you don't, then we'll see you on the radio next week. Okay. All right, we're off the radio. Off the radio. We have freed ourselves from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we're going to make use of it in overtime. We have a clip that absolutely makes use of the freedom that we have from the FCC censors.
Nice.
Yeah, going to be great. So thanks for hanging out with us online. Thanks for staying with us. We've got some great stuff lined up for you in overtime, so make sure you don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this break.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio show. We are now in overtime, the second half of the show that is online only. It's still free. We don't paywall any of our content, but it is online only. You're not going to hear this on FM radio, so we have been freed from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we've got some good stuff for you in overtime, like I've been talking about a lot. Teddy Ostrow is going to be coming on at 11:30 and talking to us about the UPS and the Teamsters and what happened in 1997. But before that, we have a caller on the line, so let's get to the caller, see what they have to say.
All right, 740, you are on the air.
Well, that's me.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Ohio.
And what's on your mind?
I'm a 35-year part-time employee with UPS. And because of the contract, I have, engaged more on social media. I found your channel, found your site, and I think you're doing a good job. I called mostly to tell you to continue. It's informative. And it's motivating. You're doing a good job.
I appreciate it, brother. That really does mean a lot.
Anything that you would like to ask me, I'm a steward, 20-plus year steward, part-time. And if you have anything, I was there in 97. I stood, on the picket line in 97. And if you have anything you'd like to ask me, we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, well, I guess how are people in your workplace feeling about these negotiations? Do you feel like they are they're as motivated as it seems like the Teamsters membership are online?
I think so. In our location, it's small. It's an extended center. We're not in a hub. There's a big difference, and they're treated differently. So the people in the small hub, they're in the same community, of course, play ball, their kids play ball, go to school. So you have a great deal of solidarity in, there's one mission. We all have to come together part-time, full-time to accomplish this mission. And our local leadership is extremely engaged. They keep us well informed. They participate, and it's hard to believe in the 35 years that I've been there. You have a lot of times local officials that you always hear people say, "Well, they only show up when it's election time, or they only show up at this time." We have a local that's engaged. They're not concerned just with the big hubs. They're concerned with everyone. And when you engage your members like that, then they become involved. They're informed and they become motivated.
Yeah, that's really important. I think to have membership or leadership that facilitates engagement by the membership. I think that really makes a world of difference in how not only how the membership feels, but how much power it gives them.
Well, it does, and again, we have two large hubs in the local, and that's where a lot of members are. So from an election standpoint, that's where your votes are, and where your problems occur, generally speaking. And sometimes those extended centers, and they're all across the United States, little centers out in the middle of nowhere, that those members seem to be forgotten or have in the past. That's not the case now. The area that I'm in, it's like probably, I live in the poorest county in Ohio, and we have a nuclear facility. So it's probably the most economically depressed area. There's no industry, no manufacturing industry in our area. There's some manufacturing, but it's small scale. So opportunities are you know, you're going to work on a sawmill, you're going to cut timber, or you're going to farm. That's your opportunities other than maybe a government job of some sort, unless you're a professional. You know, you go to the hospital.
Right. Well, what would you say are some of the biggest issues for people in your facility in these contract negotiations? And do you feel like it seems like the negotiating committee is addressing them?
Yes. We've had contract proposals and a lot of concerns. You know, people put on their proposals, and those proposals are, and that's nationwide. It's the getting rid of the 22-4, which was the two-tier driver. Now, when I say that, and this is something that's not really been out in the print, there's a full-time position with UPS that's basically inside. They call them 22-3 jobs. They're a combination. They take two part-time jobs and combine them to a full-time job. That was part of what 97. That was part of the strike of 97. You'll see the old signs that say, you know, more full-time jobs. And that's where those were created in 97. And they combine those jobs. Well, some of those jobs are inside and you're loading packages. And the other half, that may be 4 hours. And then the other half of that job is you're driving air packages. Now, here's where the rub is. While you're working on the inside, you're paid your part-time, what your seniority affords you at your part-time rate. If you go out and you drive the airs, you're afforded that air rate, which is substantially higher.
Right.
And one of the concerns in our area is that you have a full-time Teamster making a part-time wage.
Yeah.
And that, you don't see that in print too much, you know, but I feel like it is being addressed.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Jose, who's a Teamster from out in California, in the chat said said the same thing that you did. 22-3s are paid less than a full-time driver, and and one of the things that I saw from actually, and it surprised me that this person claimed to be a package car driver, complaining in our comments section in one of the videos about the idea that part-timers. He was complaining about a part-timer calling in saying, you know, we need a raise. We need, you know, this person was saying 25 an hour would be good. And this person said the idea that a part-timer should be making the same rate as a package car driver is just terrible. And, you know, because part-time jobs aren't supposed to be full-time or aren't supposed to provide for a family. And it just kind of shocks me that the penalty for working, you should face two penalties for working part-time, right? I certainly understand, you know, I work less hours, so I get less money, right? I understand that. But the idea that I make less money by virtue of working less hours, and I also have a lower wage rate, that seems wild to me. Right?
I started in 1988. At $8 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can put that in the inflation calculator and come up, and you're going to come up close to 25. That's buying power.
Right.
So within, and in 1988, we had what they called skilled labor. If you went to the preload, you started, you was an unloader, and you went to the preload, you made $1 more an hour. So within 90 days, I was making $9 an hour, had a 50-cent raise and another 50-cent raise within a year. So I'm at $10 an hour, while minimum wage for the state of Ohio was $3.35 or $3.25 at that time. So that they called us student workers. And, you know, going to college, that was substantial. That was a substantial amount of my tuition. Was it a living wage? Well, you know, I was young right then. So when you're young and you're strong, you don't need near as much money, I guess. But the point that I am making is that the part-timers now, and for the last really there's a slot between 5 and, say, 20 years. Those part-timers have come in at that $10 an hour and got the general wage increase and never have not seen any kind of what they call catch-up raises. There were catch-up raises in, I believe it was a 2002-2007 contract for part-timers, which was, it caught a lot of guys up. In a sense, am I looking to live from a part-time job? No. That's not, I'm not going to make a career of the part-time job. But the fact that I go in there and people say, well, under the contract, you're guaranteed 3.5 hours. You show up, you're guaranteed 3.5 hours. And this is under the central. So that's fine. However, in peak season, you might work 6, 7, maybe 8, depending on what shift you're on.
Mm-hmm.
So from a part-time, if you're running part-time, in July, you're getting 3.5, maybe 4 hours. In November, you're working 6 hours. So you have, you got to learn to tweak schedules. And you can do that. I'm not going to say that it's not an excuse to cry, oh, I'm part-time and I'm here. You still have to be self-motivated.
Well, I really appreciate the call. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, just that, I think that solidarity is everything. Unity is everything. Everybody together, for one cause. And that one cause is to secure a good contract for everyone. And I think that that's what the IBT is doing, and I think that translates down, at least in our local, is translating down. And I think that's my perspective. And now you have a perspective from Ohio.
All right.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing, brother. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Apollo in the GodX1 in the chat says local 439 UPS Teamster here. Thank you for watching. Apollo says package handler and driver helper from West Texas here. I hear a lot about how drivers have to deliver in 90+ weather, and I feel for them really. But I'm especially worried about our Texas and other southern area drivers because the summer days down here regularly pass 105, and it's a blessing if it gets below 100. I have to load in 70 to 90 degree weather in a building that doesn't have AC, just fans that more or less blow the hot air around, even if it even hits your area. This heat stuff is really an issue, and I think last week there was one day where there were 5 UPS package car drivers in Texas that or in California that had heat strokes, like 5 in a day. Really crazy stuff. Jose said, love seeing other Teamsters. UPS Teamsters Local 952 here. Apollo said, doesn't help that our center runs out of water and ice regularly. Local 577. Yeah, that is not good if you're running out of water. Devastator Omega says the part-time hub employees deal with more verbal abuse by management because they're there all the time versus drivers that only deal with customers. Big difference. I could imagine that it would be much more stressful having your boss over your shoulder the whole time. That would not be fun. Jose says, per the IBT from a tweet on Sunday, if tentative agreement on a new contract is not reached by July 31, UPS will force 340,000 Teamsters nationwide to withhold our labor for higher wages and better working conditions. Good stuff. So let's take a look at this. Teddy's going to be on in 10 to 15 minutes or so, and so let's take a look at this this Scab influencer.
And we actually have another caller on the line.
Oh, do we? Oh, well, let's bring the caller on.
Sure, let's do that. All right. We've got a 714 caller. You're on the air.
Buenos dias, gentlemen. It's Jose Francisco Negrete from Local 952 out here in the most happiest place on earth, Anaheim, California.
Jose, nice to hear from you again. What's on your mind?
Well, one is that Southern California is really becoming a hot labor summer out here. We just had SAG-AFTRA announce on Thursday that they're on strike. Of course, we have the WGA riders. We have the medieval time workers in Buena Park, California, that have been on strike for 90 days or something like that, some crazy amount. Or probably, no, 300 days, I believe. They've been on strike for a while. And then we have our 84 brothers and sisters out there in Palmdale extending the picket line throughout these United States to kind of disrupt Amazon, little guerrilla tactic, I guess you want to put it. So, I'm here as a rank and file, as a Teamster mobilized, and I was hearing the brother from Georgia talk about, but we have that classification, 22-3s, which are paid less than a full-time driver. So we talk about all these two-tier systems. Oh, we want to abolish the two-tier system, but I mean, we have so many classifications that it created like a two-tier system when it came to wages. So I hope with the 22-4s being eliminated, okay, that's step one. The other step is bringing 22-3s to the same pay as a regular package car driver and closing the gap between full-time and a part-timer. Full-time, we go unseen. And I work in the twilight, so I work from, in the evening shift. We start around as early as maybe 5 sometimes till as late as like 6:45. Mm-hmm. And you get a bunch of volume in that short amount of window, and you're just getting, your especially if you're on the load side, unloading to a trailer that's going to be sent into respective parts of this country. It's just you're just drenched in sweat, regardless if it's in the winter or in the summer. You're just drenched. Right. So as a Teamster mobilized, we've been advocating for a $25 starting pay, which the gentleman said from Ohio, if you put that in an inflation calculator, it would, that pay that he had in 1988 to now, it'll probably be around $25. And so we're advocating for that. We're advocating for the creation of more 22-3 jobs, because our only path to go into full-time shouldn't be driving. Take me, for example, in 2002, 2003, I wanted to go driving because, I was hearing how much drivers were making. I would talk to some of the drivers too, and I was like, damn, okay, maybe I should go into driving. And I remember, because back then everything was stick, everything was automatic, everything was stick. So I really didn't know how to drive stick. So I had a car washer, bring me in like an hour early. He'll meet me in like an hour early. He could take me to the yard outside where we have our trailers to move our trailers around, and he would teach me how to drive stick. So I learned, and then my time came to take the class. So I took a non-road test. And then I passed that. And then when I took my physical, I failed because my right eye, the optic nerve, is so weak. So I failed. And I remember going to HR, and HR's like, well, you can't go driving because of your right eye. I'm like, yeah, but, the DMV gave me a license. So that's probably a little bit more important than having to have, being able to go to the driving class. He then says, well, you're a liability for UPS because something happens to your left and you have to use your right. And at that moment, I'm glad we're not on the regulated by the FCC right now. So I said, fuck it. I was like, fuck you then, because that was my only path to go, for me to go full time in a quicker pace. That's why I've been working a second job for the last 17 years now as a instructional assistant for the Anaheim Union High School District. Because I knew that if I wasn't going to be able to drive, then for a chance for me to go full time inside the trajectory would have been long. Finally this year I got offered one, but it was from midnight to 8:30. I was like, I really can't take it because my son, he's going to start high school next year. Well, in August at Anaheim High School. And I was like, I really can't do it, But I mean, I love my morning job as well. I love working with students and helping students out. But I mean, I had to wait 24 years to be asked to get a full-time position there. That doesn't have to do with driving.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've seen in the comments is and it has been, and of course when I mention these negative comments, they are by far the minority. I mean, basically all of the comments, especially from Teamsters, have been supportive, like the ones in the chat. But there have been a few that have really kind of befuddled me. And another one was like a package car driver saying, well, just go full time if you want to support a family from a UPS. Like, just go full time, like as if, oh, well, well, I hadn't thought of that. Well, well, thank you. It's
because they don't when drivers say that, it's coming from like a singular perspective in my understanding, because they were able to go full time and within that 5-year span, 6-year span, or whatever the driving wait time was for their respective hubs. But some people can't go driving for medical reasons and other reasons. Some are caretakers, so they can't really go out driving, because if you go driving, you're committed to at minimum 8 hours. But every driver knows you really don't stay out there for 8 hours unless UPS starts messing with the volume, and starts cutting your route or whatever it may be, so you're really not out there for 8 hours. And so if you're a caretaker, being your mother, your father, whoever it may be, right? If you're driving, you're out there for a while, and you can't, you need to be taking care of what you need to be taking care of. If there's more creation of full-time inside jobs, then they have, okay, you know what? Well, I'm going to work these 8 hours, and then I know I could go home and do what I need to do, take care of my loved one. Or in my case, I could actually I could actually drop one job, drop the other job, and keep one. But, it just, the one I was given to, I just really couldn't because of the hours, And sometimes they just give you these, like, hours that are just, like, too, like, I really can't. You expect me to get off at 8:30, take my son, take a 4-6 hour nap, if my son has a basketball game, wake up, go there, then get ready to go to work. No, I wish they made a little bit more accessible hours when it comes to full-time jobs. But they do, but you just have to wait for somebody to retire. And then sometimes you have to go up against the driver, because it's easier for UPS to keep a driver in that full-time position, right? Because if you switch from a driver to a 22-3, there's no hit for UPS. You're still paying, now the pay will probably be the same. The medical benefits will still be, contributions going to be the same. So UPS really doesn't lose anything on that ground. But when you go from part-time to full-time, that's where UPS kind of takes the hit, because now you're going from a certain wage, right? For example, 17 something. So now, I think it's 21. You start off with 25. You start off to drive, and then every year you get bumped up to a higher rate until you hit your 4th year, which you'll be at top rate, which is 42, 41, I believe. And then your contribution is way different, right? Because you're not contributing to a part-time pension. Now you're contributing to a full-time pension. So it's easier for UPS, to have those tiers, if you want to call it, to qualify to go like a full-time, like a 22-3, because you have to give them to, for example, for a combo job, you have to give them to a combo job person first, and then a driver with 15 years, then last a part-timer. And we've allowed that. We have allowed that hierarchy to exist at UPS. Talking about the IBT, the Teamsters, we've allowed that to happen, and we shouldn't have. And and talking about part-time pay, those wages have been depressed for so long that UPS has profited, and the IBT has allowed it. It wasn't until 2013 when they moved the starting rate. Sorry, they moved the starting rate, and then 2018 they did the same thing, but you went from $8.50 to $15.50, $7. Okay, it's cool when you were starting, like in 2013, 2014, something like during that period. But if you started in '98 or 88, you're seeing just a $7 increase of pay because UPS, with the permission of the IBT, allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
And part-timers cannot be suffering this anymore. We need to come together as part-timers and say, you know what, enough is enough. You need to pay us a thriving wage. And that's what Teamster Mobilize is advocating for, and we're pushing for.
Thanks for the call, Jose. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, gentlemen, for having your show. That's awesome to have it.
Awesome being able to do it. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, appreciate you.
You guys have a great
Teddy
weekend. I can't wait to hear Teddy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it. Is he in the Zoom?
Let's see here. I think Teddy is in the Zoom.
All right. Well, let's bring him on, and maybe after we finish with the Teamster stuff, if he wants, he can stick around and watch this stuff about the Scab nurse influencer. Teddy Ostrow is a freelance reporter. He is also host of The Upsurge, a podcast about the contract negotiations between the Teamsters and the United Parcel Service, UPS, but really about what's become a broader potential revival in the American labor movement. We're really excited to have him on. Teddy, welcome to the show. I can't hear him. Can you hear him?
Yeah, I think Teddy might still be muted. Let's see if we can get that fixed. All right. That's unfortunate. That usually doesn't happen. Give me just a sec, Jacob.
Okay, sure. So, what we're gonna
Teddy's gonna rejoin, and we're gonna see if we can get that fixed up.
Okay. What we're going to talk to him about is we're obviously going to get the latest and greatest, and he was actually at the rally that Sean O'Brien and Sean Fain both attended in New York to support the Teamsters fight for a fair contract in particular, and they were joined by some lots of other really high-profile speakers. The Teamsters.
Hey, Jacob.
On.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now, Teddy.
Awesome.
Hey, sorry to just interrupt you, but sorry about that. Thanks for having me, guys. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely, yeah, really excited. And I was just telling folks that you just came from the rally where the Labor Seans came together, Sean Fain from the UAW and Sean O'Brien from the Teamsters, as well as AOC, the UAW Region 9 Director, Brandon Mansilla, who I think was just on your show, if I remember right. News Guild President John Schlois, NYC Comptroller Brad Landler, and New York City Council member Tiffany Caban. Lots of really high-profile names there at that speech. So let's just start off with that. We're going to get into the 97 strike, but we want to get some of the latest and greatest. So what happened at the Union of the Labor Seans this morning?
Oh man, it was super exciting. I gotta say, I had a really, everybody had a great time. Just the energy in that room, it was packed, and there were speeches. Folks were just walking around talking to members. Sean O'Brien gave a great speech, of course, as he often does, and just rallying the troops, rallying the ranks. We also heard from Vinnie Perrone, the president of Local 804. We heard from AOC. And then we didn't hear a speech from Sean Fain, the president of the UAW. I went up to him, and I went up to a number of people at the UAW. I went up to a number of different workers that we saw there, including Starbucks workers, and was like, hey, sort of a leading question. What are you doing here? Like,
right.
what's going on? And obviously the answer is solidarity. Everybody is believing that these different fights around the country that we're seeing, whether it's the 160,000 SAG workers who just walked out, the writers, the hotel workers, and various contracts that are funnily gonna line up and expire this year. It's all the same fight. So it really, and Sean Fain, I had met him before. He's a cool dude. talks to you just like you're the worker, just like he is. So it was a really fun time. Lots of great energy. I'm sure clips will be coming out of it. Yeah.
I'm
Can
looking forward
divulge more, but it was great.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to digging into those clips and maybe sharing some of them next week on the show. Was there anything new as far as negotiations? We're coming up on 2 weeks, almost a week and a half, almost 2 weeks from when UPS walked away from the negotiating table, refusing to move. So did President O'Brien have anything new on that front?
Nothing on negotiations. I would say that something new that I hadn't heard prior was pretty, I would say, explicit / implicit note that, we don't want the Biden administration to intervene as they did in the preemptively broken rail strike last year, as Bill Clinton was asked to do in 1997. And he said, we, regardless of what anyone tells us, that's not going to stop us, which I took as saying, and I think other people probably took as saying, look, like they could tell us to go back to work. We're not gonna, we're our own union. We're in the private sector. This is our fight. This is the country's fight, the workers' fight, and we're going to do it. So that's what I say is new. Beyond that, this is a part of a larger tour that Sean O'Brien, Fred Zuckerman, some of the Teamsters leaders are doing around the country, visiting different UPS facilities. They were just in New Jersey. I was at a practice picket in my hometown of Brooklyn yesterday, where Sean O'Brien was walking around, giving handshakes, joining the practice picket line. So at the moment, nothing new on negotiations. It's still possible, of course, that they could come to a deal. And the question, of course, that I have right now is we're seeing some mixed messages about whether a TA by July 31st would actually halt the strike, or they need a ratified contract. I'd say the new is the going around the country and rallying all of the rank and file to be ready to make this a credible strike threat.
Jose in the chat, and I'm not sure where he got this, but he said that the Teamsters did quote, and you know who Jose, he was on your show, actually.
Yep, Jose. Jose.
Which just, just for everybody, if you have not listened to the Upsurge, I just got caught up. I've listened to all of the public episodes now. It's all very good, and there's a lot of good information about what's going on now, and also some of the history of some of the fights that are going on. So it's really great. I could not recommend it enough, the Upsurge podcast. But Jose said, if tentative agreement on a new contract is not reached by July 31, UPS will force 340,000 Teamsters nationwide to withhold our labor, blah, blah, blah. So it seems like the Teamsters it seems like if they get a TA, they wouldn't strike. So, but I don't know, that could change as well.
It's according to people I've talked to, I think it's much like the prospect of a TA in general. We have to see.
Right.
A lot of this stuff we have to see. For example, there was a deadline of June 30th, I believe, for last best and final. It became July 5th. But this is just how negotiations are. They are like fast moving, and they can slither around, and we'll see. I think it's really in a wait and see kind of position right now.
I heard you mention on your show maybe with some trepidation, which I certainly echoed, about the moving of lines that had been drawn. How do you think that's being received by UPS, and how do you think the membership is receiving that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are kind of just like, this is what it is. Others are a little bit it's making people feel nervous. That said, people who I've talked to have been negotiating a long time, including in the Teamsters. This is how negotiations often work. You have bargaining strategies, and that you say this is the line, that is the line, and I would say that, like, it isn't ideal that like workers aren't hearing everything that's going on. There's the idea of like big, completely transparent, open bargaining. That isn't what's going on in the Teamsters, certainly far better than the past 25 years. Having like 100 or so like rank and file workers on the National Bargaining Committee, as well as like throughout the supplements. And I think just that state of not complete transparency in general, whether it's not knowing what was proposed to here's the line, and we keep crossing it. Yeah, it's going to make people anxious. But I do think that there are a lot of people, a lot of folks who have trust in sort of what's going on. And yeah, you have to trust, or you can critique, and I think both are sort of valid points of view.
Yeah. Was there anything noteworthy from the speeches of the elected officials like AOC, Tiffany Caban?
We didn't hear from Tiffany Caban. We heard from AOC, of course. I think what I noted, of course, is just the expression of solidarity and the recognition by AOC and other people who made speeches, which were Vinnie Perrone, Sean O'Brien, that this is a larger fight. The fight of Teamsters, or our fight for the labor movement more broadly. And I'm sure we can get in talking about like why that is the case. I mean, there's the obvious point of the scale of such a strike. But logistics workers, they move this country, and I think that like there are some people out there who question some politicians, as certainly who voted through like the deal for the rail workers. But I think like this is the second time I've seen AOC come out for the Teamsters in New York. So yeah, I'm hoping that there's just solidarity all around from the politicians out there. And I think there's probably some skepticism out there as well in the members, probably even some of the leaders. But yeah, it was good to see.
Last question, I think, on some of the current events type stuff, and then we can talk about some of the history that I'm really excited about. But a reporter on your podcast, who I think you said used to write for the Chicago Tribune, said that he thinks whether or not there's a strike is really going to come down to basically the last 48, 72 hours, and that both sides are kind of there's a little bit of a game of chicken going on. Does that? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like we're really just not gonna be able to know if there's gonna be a strike until basically July 31st?
That really comes down to whether UPS will come to the table and whether they clock the strike threat as credible. And it seems like so far, strangely, based on the people I have talked to, that they are not quite getting it. So, and of course, it depends on whether or not if a TA is reached, that will halt the strike. This is in just to pre-talk about the 1997 strike. July 31st, 1997. They wanted a little bit more time, and UPS Teamsters granted UPS that time. They gave another insulting offer, and come August 4th, that's when they went out on strike. So I think like Sean O'Brien has been pretty firm line in the sand about a number of different contracts, not just at UPS, but also the freight contracts that are being negotiated. T-Force just came to a TA as well, used to be UPS freight. These lines in the sand, you could interpret in whatever way. It seems like a bargaining strategy to me. And yeah, I think the 11th hour analysis, well, whether it will come to that, is certainly possible. It's certainly possible. That's oftentimes when TAs come to agreement, right?
And didn't you say that it seems like the customers of UPS aren't really clocking this strike threat as serious either? Like there would be some expectation, I would think, that if I was a customer of UPS, that I would want to kind of move some of my orders temporarily to a different logistics company, and that just is not happening.
Yeah, I mean, some of the big customers, like big shippers, throughout the pandemic also already diversified. So like if you look at UPS's I think share just by volume, it actually has decreased over the past few years. Its revenue certainly has gone up. So that diversion in the long run has already began. That said, yeah, at this point, the ones who are with UPS don't seem to be moving over. FedEx was pretty clear months ago saying like, hey, if you're going to come with us, do it like now. We're not going to take you. And they also really would just want people who have long-term contracts. Some of these contracts are long-term. So FedEx is kind of being like putting their hands up and be like, if you come with us or don't, you know.
Interesting.
And that means that the damage that you know, or not the damage, just you know, the amount of leverage that the workers have is quite great right now.
Right. So let's go ahead now and take a step back. All this is really only possible, is only happening in the way that it's happening because there's new leadership at the top of the Teamsters, right? I mean, we would not be expecting this sort of national drama under a Hoffa Jr. administration.
No way. This is not only just the result of new leadership, but that new leadership that came into power because of the valiant push by the reform movement within the union, Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which dates back to the radical rank and file movements of the 70s, helped get democracy in the union, beginning in 1989, or with the election of Ron Kerry in 1991. Pushed in 1997 for that strike, you know, worked hard to do what they could under Hoffa Jr. in the preceding or the succeeding 25 years. And then 2018, again, organizing to elect these new leaders, certainly who have more a militant posture. And yeah, we are here today with a union that is wanting to fight for a better UPS contract. And then the twin goal of that is to leverage that to organize Amazon, which threatens the broader working class by lowering standards.
Absolutely. And that is something that I have been excited to see O'Brien say in a lot of these, in a lot of his speaking engagements on this, is that, you know, there's that Amazon is really, you know, an existential threat to a good middle class life, you know, and that winning a good contract at UPS is kind of a necessary first step to organizing Amazon, and so the new leadership at the Teamsters is really inspiring, I think, in a number of ways, and you mentioned, you know, that even beyond just like, oh, there's a parallel here in that these are similar things that are happening. There's actually roots from this reform slate to the reform movement that elected Ron Kerry. So tease out some of those roots for us, and what are some of the similarities that we saw in 1997 to what happened to bring Sean O'Brien to the presidency today?
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of differences. We can bite them off as we go. But so I mentioned Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which played a critical role in bringing the current administration of the Teamsters to power. That came after basically Hoffa Jr., son of Jimmy Hoffa, the infamous but also legendary Jimmy Hoffa, forced the 2018 contract down the throats of the workers, despite them voting it down using an arcane clause in the Teamsters Constitution. They took that frustration, which was frustration with the union as well, for proposing this second-tier drivers. It was the union that actually proposed the second-tier drivers. That was
explain that, how that happened, because that's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and it's kind of I think when Teamsters who talk about it, they're almost embarrassed for that. It was this 22-4 is the second-tier driver system, whereby a new generation of drivers receive worse benefits, worse pay than their predecessors. That was pitched by the union, because UPS, they've been using a word for a very long time, dating back to 97. Of course, we want flexibility. Union said, here, have it. And this was also meant to try to, pitch to something to tamp down on overtime. But anyway, that was incredibly frustrating, because the rank and file workers, organized through TDU in part, voted it down. This is a hard thing to do at the national level. Like, we've seen supplementals over the years get voted down consistently, but voting it down was a tough thing to do, and people really put an immense amount of organizing into it. So when it was shoved down their throats, they got really, really angry, and this sort of was channeled into the election against Verma, who is this kind of hand-picked guy from Hoffa Jr., and toward Sean O'Brien and Fred Zuckerman's slate, Teamsters United. And if we look back in time, you know, TDU sort of clutched onto these similar frustrations and channeled them into productive organizing for a long time. They emerged in the 1970s. They were first Teamsters for a Decent Contract, kind of merged and folded into different groups to become Teamsters for a Democratic Union. And at that time, the frustrations were having to do with a number of things. But of course, there was just the corruption in the union that really was losing them power at that point, you know, coupled with the deregulation of trucking, which absolutely destroyed the industry. You know, you went from like a national master freight contract of like 450,000 freight truckers to, you know, there's something like 50,000 today, really. And a lot of that happened in just like the first few years. So there's corruption, there's not democracy at the national level. There was no voting at that time in the 1980s or prior to 1989, which was when, strangely, a probe prompted by some murders and other issues, led by Rudy Giuliani.
Interesting.
Terrible mayor of New York for a very long time. Also Trump lawyer. Basically investigated, and Teamsters for a Democratic Union was there to orient this federal monitoring of the union as a result of the corruption. They oriented it to pushing for democracy in the union. It's Teamsters for a Democratic Union. And that meant that there would be the first one member, one vote election for top officers in 1991. So, and kind of riding off of this federal probe, riding off of the frustration of so much corruption, you know, like selling away the pension fund, they were able to push successfully with other parts of the union to elect Ron Carey, who some people sort of like, you draw a line from Sean O'Brien to Ron Carey. They have different roots, certainly. O'Brien from Boston and Ron Carey from New York, militant leader in New York, who was the president of Local 804, which is where, amongst whose members I was with today. And they pushed for Ron Carey, who said it's enough that, you know, even though there were direct elections by then, it's enough with the concessions, it's enough with the corruption. We're going to turn this union around. And he won with 48% of the vote. Really shocked everybody at that time. And a lot of people didn't believe that there was going to be democracy in the union. But there was. And Ron Carey, in the succeeding years, with some quiet and not so quiet help from TDU, started building towards what would be the 97 strike.
No, go ahead.
No, I was like, maybe I can stop there. But yeah, so TDU really funneled the 2018, from 2018 to the 2021 election of the new Teamsters leaders. TDU funneled the frustrations and the federal probe towards democracy in the union in 1991 and the election of Ron Carey. And that is one of the similarities, which is just this base organizing, reform movement, which is also, we're seeing it across different unions right now. UAW had its first one member, one vote election of top officers, which is a direct result of the organizing of Unite All Workers for Democracy, UAWD, started in 2019. Lots of similarities we're seeing here. But the other similarity, stop me if you like, but the other similarity, I think, or one of the other similarities, is just the problems that we're seeing in the union and also just at UPS. So 1997, that strike, which Ron Carey started organizing for a year prior to contract expiration, with TDU's help, of course, and with key TDU folks in the administration. The tagline was "Part-time America won't work," and I just heard Jose, who was talking about how hard it was to get an inside job, couldn't get a driver job, and for years. And this is a widespread problem at UPS today. Well, in the 1960s, this is when it started happening. Basically, UPS started laying off full-time workers, full-time inside workers, and replacing them with part-timers. Right. Ron Carey at Local 804 led several strikes from like 1968 through the 70s, basically to halt this process that was being done, the replacement of full-time workers with part-timers. They understood that this was an existential threat to what the Teamsters offered as a union, which was at the time just a brilliant life. They had, I think I read recently, they had Teamsters members in like the 70s had wages that were 20% higher than even steel workers and unionized auto workers.
Wow.
This was threatened, and UPS continued this process. Local 804 and some other locals were able to kind of stop it or stem it, not completely stamp out what was going on. But by 1982, this is a key year, which was a major year of concession. The Teamsters Union nationally cut part-time wages down to $8 an hour, which would remain there until 97, where it was raised to $8.50, and then it would remain there until about 2010. So we're talking about a 50-cent starting raise over 30 years.
Yeah.
And this is why wages,
Yeah, well, and even you said, it was cut to $8 an hour, and even that, though, is comparatively high to what Teamster part-timers at UPS have today. We just had a caller on the when we went right in as we went into overtime, who is a 30-year part-timer, who said that he is just now into, if I'm remembering right, just now getting into $20 an hour. And he said he remembered working for $8 an hour back in the 80s. And if you put that into an inflation calculator, that's $25 an hour today.
Yep.
And the contractual pay rate is $15.50.
Yep. It just got raised by COLA to $16.30, I believe, in some places, but it's just still it's like nothing. And that's and it's funny. I want to know what I haven't done the calculation adjusting for inflation. I believe it was cut by like a 20% or so.
Wow.
So that's to down to $8 an hour before they had roughly the same wages as full-time workers. I think many of them lacked fringe benefits, though. They didn't get like holidays, pensions, that sort of thing, which changed over time. But I'm like, okay, so the concession year means that it would be over $25 an hour adjusting for inflation today.
Imagine
so what did that look like? Yeah, and I've talked to workers who started after 97 and they had like $8.50, and this is in the 90s. And $8.50 an hour, it's not great, but pretty solid for like some of the young people who are just picking up some part-time work. Like this is now, that's not solid. That's just not living. But anyway, that's why so that's just on the wage point. That's why wages are such a big issue today, which is a difference. Not a difference, but rather the difference is that wages are the loudest demand coming from the part-timers at UPS right now. When prior 97 was really about this shift of from full-time to part-time work. Right. In the mid 90s, the Teamsters did some research leading up to the 97 strike. It was a report called "Half a Job is Not Enough." And they found that from the early to mid 90s, that UPS had hired about like 46,000 workers. 83% or so of them were part-time. By the late 80s, the UPS was already like 60% part-timers. This was bad for full-timers. This was bad for part-timers. And this was something that was channeled into a contract campaign. Ron Carey, as far as I know, I've tried to talk to some people who knew him about whether or not like the part-time struggles were really dear to his heart. Because from what I can tell, he was pushing for it for a long time within his own local. But it also just came from a larger recognition in the United States, and from good communication strategy emanating from TDU, from other people in the union, that this is a part of a larger problem that resonates in the United States. Part-time work, gig, temporary, contingent labor, proliferating corporate America, restructuring, firing full-time workers, and people having to work multiple jobs, getting cut hours, but then working more hours than they did before because they have to work multiple jobs. And meanwhile, this was a quote unquote economic recovery period in the 1990s. Sounds very familiar to today, right? This is another similarity. We have we're dealing with gig workers, we're dealing with part-time work. I just saw a report that was something like over 4 million people are working part-time jobs, who would like to get full-time jobs but can't because of it's out of their control. It's a major problem in the 90s, economic recovery that wasn't reaching working class people. And of course, UPS was a leader in this corporate restructuring, part of the broader anti-union, outsourcing, shipping factories down to the Sun Belt process. Full-time to part-time was a big part of that. So in 1997, while the UPS was trying to say they're just greedy, they're mad that we want to take the pension away from the Teamsters and control it ourselves, because that was an issue, that UPS wanted to take the pension away, or rather they wanted to take control of the pension. It wasn't the main issue. When they polled workers about what they cared about, it was this issue. It was the issue of part-time work. And they for a year, similar to today, started a contract campaign a year prior, leading up to contract expiration. Organized people, sent out pamphlets, contract countdown pamphlets explaining what's going to happen. They had organizers at the local level, at the building level, at the international level, including international organizers who they sent off to locals. This is a much more divided union. One difference is a much more divided union in 1997, coming off of the election of Ron Kerry and still elements of corruption. But they had a year-long campaign basically to prep to make a strike threat credible. UPS didn't even expect it. The media didn't expect it. People did not expect this was going to happen, and they did it. 185,000 Teamsters walked out for 15 days, and it was a resounding victory. They won 10,000 jobs that were combined, were made by 10,000 full-time jobs that were made by combining two part-time, or 20,000 part-time jobs. And this happened again. They were able to build off of this, even though there was a return to Hoffa Jr. In 2002, they won 10,000 more jobs.
Wow.
So it was a huge, and there was also, for some workers, the largest wage increases at UPS that I think they had ever seen. Not the case for part-timers. I think they only had like a 50-cent raise. But nonetheless, this was a huge victory. And I'll stop there for a sec if you have any questions. I could keep going, man.
No, and that's and I think this is really showcasing why your podcast is going to be such an educational piece of work for people that want to know not only what's the nitty-gritty of latest and greatest, what's happening today, what were the latest on the negotiations, all this, but learning all of this history that is that is relevant as we want to learn as workers how to fight today, because we're not the first people to do this, right? We're not the first people ever in unions. There's been people doing it for almost like 150 years, right? And so there are things that we can learn from people who won and people who lost, and the 97 strike is really a great example of people who won. And you mentioned that the tiers were an issue. In one of your more recent episodes, you talked about the PVDs, the personal vehicle drivers, and how that's almost a third tier of worker at UPS.
There are many tiers. I just want to say there are many tiers at UPS, and the part-time, full-time is probably like the original sin of tiers, due to UPS's power, but also due to concessions in the union. That is a tier. There are also tiers for Article 40, which is all the air workers who This was a concession that was made when UPS was trying to catch up with FedEx in the air market. So yeah, PVD's another tier. And I just wanted to say one thing about just we need to like look back and learn. Something interesting that Rand Wilson told me. Rand Wilson was the communications coordinator of the UPS contract campaign in 1997. He said that, our organizing strategies were hardly new. They were hardly new. He was an organizer, I think, with the atomic worker, energy workers.
OCAW.
Prior, he went, yes, and he said, the difference was that we have 185,000 workers, and that's the difference of a strike at UPS. Now again, 340,000 workers, and what that means for the labor movement, what that means for the sector.
Yeah, and it really does seem like they grasp the relevance of not only the importance of this fight for their members, but also for the broader working class in this country. And just so people know what PVDs are, that stands for Personal Vehicle Delivery. And so it's kind of self-explanatory. These are people that are working for UPS and using their personal vehicles, eating all of this cost that UPS would typically have to with their trucks, with their cars, putting all sorts of miles on it, having to pay for the oil changes. You mentioned, a few people had their car robbed with packages in it. And, there's a lot of this just another way to offload costs onto the workers and bring more money into the pockets of the shareholders. And in 97 as today, it's important to note that there's money to go around. UPS has never made more profits than they did last year, $13 billion. So this is, there's definitely money to make sure that to put an end to tears.
Let's see if I can thread the needle and like not get completely lost. But basically, what we've seen with part-time workers from the 80s when they really proliferated all time today, like this is how UPS built its empire, is by having greater flexibility, which really means just like greater ability to exploit workers, use them when they want, schedule them when you want. And that is why UPS is what it is today. That's why through the 80s they really expanded. That's why they were able to enter the air market, send next day airs. That's why in the 90s they expanded even further. That's why they in the 21st century they expanded, and especially exploded in the past few years with the e-commerce boom of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's not just the exploitation of part-timers, but that's a huge element. It's also, of course, making drivers, work 6 days a week up to 14 hours a day. We can't forget that. Right. And just to bring that into it, I mean, this constant demand for flexibility means the creation of tiers. It means the exploitation of workers and also pitting people up against each other. The full-time, part-time divide, the second tier, first tier divide, the PVD and package car driver divide. But in each of these cases where there are these divisions, the harm to one is a harm to both. The fact that 60% of the workforce is making 16, or not 60, not all 60% are making $16 an hour. About 100,000 of them, according to the union, make below $20 an hour. We have tons of people living in poverty practically. That isn't good for the feeder drivers who make the most money at UPS. That isn't good for the package car drivers, because it harms the bargaining unit, and it means that eventually UPS can get what they want, including these workers like PVDs.
Yeah.
Jose which are the personal vehicle drivers.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to mention this. Jose sent me last night a flyer for municipal assistance from the city of Anaheim, California, and looking at these, if you look at the income limits, somebody that's hired today at UPS living in Anaheim qualifies for financial assistance.
People are living here in New York. People are sleeping in the subways.
Yeah.
People are living in shelters. People, I talked to Jose for a number of times. He told me about people living in their cars. And this is an issue that's impacting so many people across the country, which is why this is so important beyond logistics as well. But just to thread it back to, you know, these tiered issues at UPS throughout the economy, it deleverages the power to have people, you know, at odds with one another, have a huge portion or even a small portion of people who are doing worse in a union. Personal vehicle drivers, these gig-like workers who use their own personal vehicles and work off of an app that uses the UPS dyad, that's the scanner technology of the package car drivers. They actually are employees. They're seasonal employees, and they pay union fees where in non-right to work states. The problem, of course, is that the union can't get, you know, close to them in time, and they're not there for long enough to, you know, benefit from the protections that some of them actually do get. There's like this chaos that occurs during peak season, and PVDs really get the brunt of it. But of course, the fault, you know, like the depravity of part-timers, it harms the full-timers. They fear for their jobs and what have you, can't bargain for more. The PVDs, they're dealing with so much, and it de-skills the package car driver job. It takes hours away. It means that less package car drivers will get you know, hired. So what UPS has been doing for decades and decades is dividing the union. The union, in many cases, unfortunately, has allowed it to happen, and it harms everybody. Thankfully, you know, in '97 there was unity, and right now there appears to be unity. The biggest, you know, we were talking about what's new in negotiations. It came down right to part-time wages, but like, at least when I'm looking at this, one of the biggest questions and you know, from an organizing and messaging standpoint, is how the union can make sure that the workers stay united. And it appears that they are, but making sure that the company doesn't win, the company doesn't benefit from this flexibility, which is really a division of the union for them to exploit, you know, between the ranks. So workers need to look at each other and say, you know, see each other and in each other. A lot of full-time drivers, you can't become a driver oftentimes in hubs without going through the warehouse for 3 to 8 years, right? So it's all about solidarity right now, and from what I'm seeing, that is there, thankfully. You know, we got drivers fighting out in the streets, doing these practice pickets. You know, oftentimes part-timers aren't even there because of the timing. It's good when they schedule these practice pickets so that they can include the part-timers. That's great. Some locals are doing that. But even though some of them are not there, we have drivers out in the streets saying, look, we're fighting for our part-time brothers because we're the same.
Yeah. There's somebody in the chat, you know, say a package car driver, you know, saying that I'd be happy to strike for my part-timer sisters and brothers, coworkers, and you know, speaking of flexibility, Joe from Cortland here in Alabama, who is a retired steelworker and really, you know, led his local in a lot of ways against some of management's demands for flexibility in his workplace, said that greater flexibility is just another way to say bend over. You know, and I think that's I don't know of a better way to put it.
Right.
So, you know, Teddy, I think that this has been great, and we'll give you a chance to say, you know, some parting stuff. But I think that my final question is going to be, what impact is it going to have on, you know, and this kind of goes to your conversation with Barry Eidlin on your show and on Twitter, where, you know, he's always kind of a bit pessimistic on some of this stuff. and so what is it going to mean when the Teamsters win?
Yeah, I'm going to defend my man Barry. I think Barry maybe gets rep for being pessimistic, but he plays the wonderful role of someone who keeps us grounded in the labor movement to understand and really keep a good record. You know, recently he actually clarified something that we've been saying on the show for a while.
That a lot of people have been saying that, like, you know, mainstream media people who get, you know, paid the big bucks to do this were saying too, not just you.
Yeah. that it's the largest single employer strike in U.S. history if it happens. And it actually is. It wouldn't be. It would be the second, because there is a lot of understudying of this specific strike in 1970 at GM. But anyway, regardless,
just to like underline that, isn't that insane that there's so little focus on labor reporting and labor history that it just goes unremarked that, oh yeah, hey, by the way, 400,000 workers went on strike, almost 500,000 at one employer in 1970, and here people have been saying for the last year that this 340,000 employee strike would be the largest, and just nobody remembered that. People lived through that, and nobody was like, oh, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that is it within historical memory. Like, how do we have this ridiculous historical misremembering? And I was DMing, even beyond like that weird sort of media issue, of which I was a part. Like I was DMing with Barry Eidlin, and we were just both marveling at that there were 400,000 GM workers, just period.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And now there's
400,000. There's like 400,000 UAW members right now.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that said, you can hear just my defense of Barry and also correcting the record. Barry, you could hear Barry say this on the show. When 340,000 workers, definitionally in every zip code in the country, go on strike, everybody's going to see it. And if they win, everybody's going to be like, whoa,
right.
do I have that leverage to look at? What is this newfound leverage I learned in the form of a strike, So that's just in terms of a demonstration effect. And we're seeing it now too with the actors, with the writers, with the hotel workers, with nurses strikes we've been seeing, or just there are tons of strikes that seem to be going on. I don't know whether they're like reaching the most historical levels at this point, but at least in the past few years, we're seeing something. And the UPS strike would be an immense spark for that in a demonstration way, in a standards way, in a leveraging way for bargaining. If 340,000 workers win a dope contract, then that gives the Teamsters a wonderful golden ticket to go and show to everyone else and be like, look at what we can give you, And of course, the highest stakes are for Amazon, which is trying to destroy the working class. And so, it's a big deal. Whether or not it's the largest or the second largest or whatever, why are we measuring it in that way? This is immense. That's going to happen right now. It definitely grasps media attention, but unfortunately, the media has been covering it about the damage done to and the costs of a strike to the economy, the consumers. But the cost of them not winning an enormous contract is immensely larger. That is the stakes for the labor movement right now.
Could not agree more, and it is important to have reporters like yourself and media like In These Times and the Real News Network that your podcast is partnered with, that remind people that we are not just consumers, right? We are more than our consumption. We are members of a working class, and we are citizens of the country and the world. And it's just so, and those things are so much more important than our identity as a consumer. And that's something that, Adam, you were talking about on your appearance with Flash on America's Workforce. Speaking of which, Teddy, you should go on America's Workforce at some point if you haven't already. It's great. And
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, you don't know what America's Workforce Union Radio podcast is.
I gotta do, man. I screwed up. Did I out myself?
Yeah, you outed yourself. We'll hook you up. Well,
I wanted to shout out Teddy's appearance on Citations Needed because I had actually just recently listened to that before my appearance on America's Workforce, and so that was really in my head when we were talking about this conversation because, yeah, I mean, media trains us to think of ourselves as consumers. How do things convenience or inconvenience our consumption? And, you know, that's kind of the framing of any particular labor issue. And that's so unfortunate and such a disservice to the lived realities of people every day in this country. I mean, and what people struggle through and go through. And so, yeah, I really appreciate your work, Teddy, in highlighting these issues and really, you know, centering worker voices and telling the story, because this struggle is important for all working people, regardless of whether you're, you know, UPSer or a Teamster. This is about the standards of working people in this country. And so, you know, this is a huge contract, and it's also huge in terms of reformism within our union movement and democracy within our union movement, and can we get the goods? You know, it's one thing to win office, but it's another thing to win a good contract and to organize your forces sustainably. So for all those reasons, the work you're doing is really important and really appreciated.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate hearing it. And thank you for your work. It's you guys do brilliant stuff. I tell Jake about how jealous I am of all your designs and your thumbnails, but that's just the hilarious, you know, superficial part of the brilliant, you know, reporting and brilliant radio work that you guys do. You know, in the lineage of others like The Real News, like in these times. Shout out to all of those out there who are actually speaking to workers and not to logistics, supply chain management experts.
Hell yeah.
I think that's a great place to end it on. Check out Teddy Ostrow's podcast, The Upsurge, wherever you get your podcasts, and on the Real News Network and in these Times magazines. He's also writing articles for those places and elsewhere. Really great work. Teddy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, really enjoyed that conversation and really appreciate it. Y'all definitely check out the pod.
Yeah,
you need to.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I'm gonna text the producer of AWF and get Teddy on AWF. Flash needs to talk to him.
Absolutely, that would be great.
So we've got a few more stuff that we want to talk about, and I've been teasing this Scab influencer story the whole show, and we haven't got to it yet. So we're gonna get to that right now. Adam, do you know what an influencer is?
I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean these folks that kind of don't they make a living off social media basically?
Yeah.
Promoting products primarily, and you know that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, you know,
the youth follow
like
them.
Yeah,
right?
the youth are influenced by these influencers,
right.
as the name might suggest.
Right.
You know, a lot of there are different types. I think that some people would throw us in the category broadly. You know,
sure.
It's just like social media commentary and chatting and a lot of it. When you think of influencer, you know, I think generally people think of like just personality type stuff and makeup and stuff like this.
Right.
And so,
you know, in a sense, organizers are influencers. I mean, definitionally, right? So,
right.
Yeah, I mean,
if we're doing our job right, if we're successful.
right. Yeah, you hope to be an influencer if you're organizing.
So. Yeah, and so, you know, and some people do it even not really as a job. They don't really make a lot of money off of this. They just enjoy, you know, that they enjoy, you know, doing these kind of tutorials or just chatting with folks or telling stories
right.
and stuff like this. And that's and you know,
whatever floats your boat.
That's all. You know, I mean, that's there's kind of
my philosophy.
Yeah.
Generally, like whatever floats your boat.
I have friends
not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
Like
I have friends that are influencers actually. Somebody from high school that I used to be close with, she has like 1 million followers on TikTok, but she's not doing what this influencer is doing. So this person is a nurse, and she's a travel nurse. And again, nothing against travel nurses; those are great. But she also released just this gem of a video last week. Let's watch it.
All right. Let's see if I can get that pulled up. I'm sorry about that, y'all. We had to do quite a bit of editing on our videos this morning because we had so much cursing. We had so much cursing going on. All right, Jacob, I'm gonna have to come back to you on that.
Oh, what?
Let me come back to you on the Scab nurse.
Oh no.
It's just taking me a sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
I've got Scab nurse number 2, but there's a Scab nurse number 1.
That's not playing?
Okay, I got you. Watch this, y'all.
Day in the life as a strike nurse. I am on my way to the airport to fly into the city where the staff nurses are striking. Strike contracts are a pretty quick turnaround, so you have to be ready to go. You also have to be extremely adaptable and flexible, similar to travel nursing. Guys, this eye mask and headphone combo on the plane, I literally pass out every plane ride now. I definitely found what works for me. Transportation took me from the airport to the hotel where onboarding takes place. On the way there, I made some friends. Nurses honestly make the best friends, don't tell me otherwise. Onboarding was super organized, which I love. Then my nurse bestie that drove in to work the strike picked me up for dinner. To bed I go for a long week.
Okay, so you make the best friends
while you're
scabbing. You are literally making things worse for your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But apparently it continues.
Yeah, well there is another one. And so, you can imagine that the reception to her bragging about being a scab was not well received.
Yeah, imagine that. I mean, here we have workers all over the country rising up. Workers all over the country putting it on the line, literally walking the picket line, fighting for their family and their livelihood, fighting to raise the standards for working people in this country. And you are bragging
right
about scabbing and
just showing people how fun it is. How fun it is to slit the throats of members of your class.
And here's the thing, like I try to be understanding that, not everyone who scabs, quote unquote, necessarily realizes what they're doing when they're getting into it, right? We've seen that throughout history where workers are kind of tricked into scabbing, more or less. We also have workers who maybe don't understand what it is that they're doing and why that's bad. You have workers who sometimes are just so desperate. Maybe they're put into that position for various reasons. I try to be as understanding as possible, but at the end of the day, you are betraying your fellow workers.
Yeah.
This is not that, right? This is not a situation of desperation or where you don't know what you're doing. Clearly, this person knows what they're doing and feels totally okay with it.
Yeah.
So okay that they will brag about it on the internet.
Right.
That's pretty sorry.
Yeah. So, so she got some reaction to that. And so let's see how she responded.
All right, guys. So I normally do not give in to people's negativity, hate comments, but I'm gonna address this once and I'll never address it again. First and last time doing this. I posted 2 videos on my page of me working or going to work on a strike, and I've never encountered more nurse bullying than I have the past week.
Nurse bullying.
Let me just say that nurses are professionals, and the way that some of you guys are name calling and threatening me on my page is disgusting.
So I'm just curious, names like Scab,
right,
class traitor.
Yeah, just accurate descriptions of you.
Sellout.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, backstabber.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they all seem like fair names given the situation, but I understand that's negativity, toxic negativity.
Right. Yeah. Well, she's gonna throw some words at you that you're gonna love.
Okay.
The way you treat others is a reflection of you. So just be careful.
No irony sense
with what you say to other people. I really do wish you self-healing and self-growth, and I hope you fix whatever you got going on internally. If you like to be mean to other people, just know that
So I'm just going to say, I really do hope that she experiences some growth from this moment.
And self-healing.
Right, yeah. because class consciousness doesn't come easy to everyone. I get it. Like, you know, you're a backstabber, but you don't have to always be a backstabber. You can grow from that. You can self-heal, perhaps, from your backstabbing.
Working as a nurse, whether you're a strike nurse, a travel nurse, you're a staff nurse, you work in med-surg, you work in ICU, you work in the...
Also, I love how you just throw in, like, a strike nurse as just like a routine category.
Right, as if it's like the same as a nurse in the ICU. Yeah.
Right, some people work in the ER, some people
are
work
scabs.
Some people work at the, you know, pediatrician's office, some people break a strike.
Yeah.
You know.
Clinic, you work in aesthetics. Nothing is wrong about that. You are going to see a lot of opinions all throughout social media about different jobs. There is nothing wrong with you going and working and paying your bills. I just want to end this with saying...
It really does depend, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that's
you can pay your bill. The Nazi guards paid their bills, right?
Yeah,
and
there are hitmen. There are actual hitmen who do live and exist in this world. So no, that's just, you know, let's not just make a blanket statement that way. She needs to self-heal.
I love my job, and I'm not here to say any negative things about people, and I won't. I hope people like this have a better day and kind of be more aware about what they say and how that may affect other people.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat, it's Vex, cry bully therapy speak. And that's exactly it, right? I mean, just the condescending, self-healing, all this nonsense, total misappropriation of words that can be valuable.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm teasing and everything, but like, obviously, self-healing is good. Growth is good.
I like to heal. I like to grow.
We like to grow from our mistakes. And in all sincerity, I really hope that this lady really did learn something from this, because it seems like she was taken aback by like the criticism. And it's like, sister, where have you been? How did you not realize that this could be controversial?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. I feel like the only appropriate emotion for a scab would be shame.
Yeah. Well, and she has, and unfortunately, she has not grown. So that last video was posted 6 days ago. And somebody commented that said, when you work as a strike nurse, you give the hospitals an option. If they can't hire strike nurses, they have to give in to staff demands. And, you know, I mean, that's the thing, right? And that's also why when nurses go on strike, they give hospitals notice so that if they're not able to get enough scabs, they can transport patients to other hospitals during the strike. And
yeah, I mean, to be very clear about that, what you're doing is you're undermining the power of your colleagues, your fellow workers, the people who are like you, who have nothing to sell but their labor, their expertise, their skills, their brain and muscles, whatever the situation may be. In this case, it's their nursing. That is really an unacceptable choice. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm all for an inclusive movement and, you know, including as many people as possible, but as part of that, you have to recognize that an injury to one is an injury to all. And when you partake in that kind of activity of crossing picket lines or, you know, serving as a scab to undermine a strike, that is detrimental to you ultimately. Mm-hmm. Right. Not just to those particular workers, but to all of us as workers in this country and in this world. And so, you know, I hope you grow from that, and I hope folks learn from that situation. No, I don't condone bullying of, you know, folks of any kind necessarily, but, you know, scabbing is a bullying tactic, frankly. And it is used by the bullies, which would be management, the owners, the you know, ruling class, so to speak, who, through their power imbalance, undermines class power of working people.
So somebody replied to that comment about, like, just kind of illustrating what the issue is. Somebody replied, said, "What if their demands are excessive?" Devil's advocate. And the creator liked that comment and put like a bunch of exclamation points under it. That was 1 day ago. Another person said, the moment a travel...
So that's the problem, right? Is just the nurses are asking for too much.
Right, yeah.
You know,
of course.
The staffing
Which
ratios,
is just totally something that happens all the time is nurses asking for too much. And it is never that CEOs are asking for too much. You don't ever see that. Another comment said, the moment a travel nurse starts a strike contract, that is them supporting other nurses, taking on responsibilities they left behind to strike. Oh, jeez. Here's another one. I mean, they're striking and the creator liked that comment. Here's another comment. I mean, they're striking and saying it's, quote, all about the patients, not money. Then they're mad you're taking care of said patients. Nope. They're mad that you're undermining them and making it more difficult for them to take care of said patients. The creator liked that comment. Here's another one. Girl, don't worry about them. Get your money. You owe no one any loyalty but the green. And that is really, and she liked that comment.
And that's
really
the way,
the American way. Yeah. Just no allegiance to anybody. Your soul is for sale if somebody's willing to pay you enough.
Right. Well, I, for one, have to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And so, no, I'm not for sale. I'm unbought and unbossed, and that's how we all ought to be. And that's just... it's disappointing because we can do so much better.
Yeah.
And when we look out for one another and we take care of one another, we can actually do a lot better as a society. But we can't with that kind of mentality. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully this influencer won't have much influence except for to, reveal what happens when you betray your fellow worker.
There's two more stories I want to get to, and I'll promise I'll be quick, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up.
That's right. We got folks waiting on us.
So the UAW, we've been talking about new leadership in the Teamsters. We talked about the UAW with Teddy, and the Teamsters are not the only ones with fresh blood. You've also got the UAW, who began bargaining with the Big Three last week. Their international elections, the first ever in the history of the union, resulted in a clean slate for the reformers, who were backed by Unite All Workers for Democracy, the Reform Caucus, and the UAW. And like I said, they began bargaining with the Big Three last week. And traditionally, that bargaining began with a handshake with the companies, if you can imagine such a thing. This big ceremonial thing, there's all the press, a bunch of pictures, and there's all, just rubbing elbows with the bosses that you're going to be bargaining across the table from in a, hopefully an adversarial way. So that's how negotiations have started for decades. This time, it started with what they're calling a members handshake. And Sean Fain said that he will not shake hands with an executive from the Big Three until they do right by his members. I think that's exactly the right posture to take towards this kind of stuff. And of course, this is a symbolic gesture, not shaking hands with the CEOs, shaking hands with the members. That is not going to put money in the pockets of the members, but it is indicative of a new direction that the UAW is going in, and one that I believe will result in better for the members and better for working folks in America. And it is a strategy that has historically resulted in wins for the members of the unions that engaged in that strategy and for working people writ large. So here's a promotional video that the union cut from the members' handshake. Let's play that.
Good to see you, brother. You ready for this?
Myself and members of the International Executive Board will be kicking off negotiations in a whole new way by shaking hands with the members.
You all right?
Stephanie Williams, just wanted to say hi.
Oh, yeah.
We want to hear from working members. We want to take your message straight to the bargaining table.
My big issue is cost of living.
You bet.
Pension for the guys that get rid of the tiers. Get rid of the tiers.
You bet.
In a break with tradition, there won't be no public handshake ceremony with the companies. I'm not shaking hands with any CEOs until they do right by our members and we fix the broken status quo at the Big Three.
If you're not with us, then get out the way, because we're marching for it, right?
Yeah, you're damn right.
The members have to come first. That's just one of the many changes we're making in order to win a historic victory at the Big Three. We're changing how we negotiate, we're changing how we organize, how we fight, and how we win.
Really great stuff there, and important posture to take into the negotiations as they fight to end tiers, as they fight to bring wages up, as they fight to ensure that the transition to electric vehicles is one that is just and that maintains a quality of life for the people who create those electric vehicles. It's very important, and it's also important to understand that Stellantis alone has made $250 billion over the last decade, $29 billion in the last year alone, and that they can absolutely afford to pay this, to pay their workers what they're worth. So when they come to you crying poor, it's important not to believe it, and it's also important not to buy. You know, I was on Dale Jackson's show earlier this week, and he said, quote unquote, the unions is what led to the decimation of the auto industry because they asked for too much. Are they going to ask for too much this time? And it's just important to understand how silly that is, because one of the reasons that a reform group was able to win the UAW is because of corruption at the top of the UAW. And people talk about corruption and people talk about quote unquote union corruption, but they never really talk about exactly what it was that happened. What was the corruption? The corruption was allowing the companies to was being in the pocket of the executives illegally, taking bribes, selling their members out. That's the corruption that we're talking about here. So the idea that these people who were, on the one hand, prosecuted for illegally selling out their members, were on the other hand asking for so much for their members that they bankrupted the auto industry. It's just a silly thing to believe. And so, you know, it's important that you put that to bed. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what the Big Three, what the negotiations with the Big Three, how they turn out. Obviously supporting the UAW and wishing them a fair contract. One more here, and then we'll roll out of here. Y'all know that we had been talking about, we've been covering the rail situation for a long time. We talked about the contract, and we've been talking about how now, actually, most rail workers in the United States have paid sick days. Most of the rail unions and rail carriers have come to agreements after the contract was, I believe, immorally and grossly pushed down the throats of the workers and the unions who had voted down the contract by the Biden administration and by Congress. They have since, most of them, gotten sick days, but that is not. They haven't stopped retaliating against people who have been pushing to get paid sick days, particularly friend of the show, Paul Lindsay. He was a guest on the show. He was now a railroad engineer, and he was fired. And he's been fired 3 times now. And Paul Lindsay asserts that is so that it makes it that much more difficult for an arbitrator to overturn it, because this time they'd have to overturn 3 firings, 3 separate cases.
Wow.
And so that level of retaliation is unprecedented, and it's not for performance. It's not for performance. We're going to play this clip from Paul Lindsay's interview with Working People, friend of the show, Maximilian Alvarez. The Working People podcast. Again, recommend checking that one out. Let's play a clip from Max's interview with Paul and let him tell you what it is that they are firing him for.
So it's bad enough they held an investigation, a formal hearing on this. That probably would have been overturned by the arbitrator when they looked at it. Well, they want to multiply that times 3 to see if an arbitrator will overturn it 3 times, because I referred to myself in the investigation just as I think any worker right now would feel toward these corrupt billionaire employers. And that is, I referred to myself as feeling like a slave to my work, to my industry, right? And they didn't like that. And so they held another formal investigation a few weeks later to fire me again for saying that I used a racial slur to talk about myself when I was referring to myself as being a slave to their company. And
fuck
then
off, man.
and then they held a third one that day that I didn't even know was going on until afterwards. We went straight into another formal hearing so that they could bring one more TikTok video that I'd posted into the mix, this time about the SEMA derailment and the train leaving the rails doing 140 miles an hour, right? So they fire me. They hold 3 separate formal investigations, one on the original first 5 TikTok videos, the next for me calling myself a slave to them, and the next for another TikTok video, so that they can ensure that I'm silenced and can never be brought back to work by an arbitrator, is what they're trying to do. And it's unprecedented and it's unheard of in the industry. I don't know that anyone in the industry that's dealt with the union and formal investigations like that has ever seen someone investigated 3 times in regard to the same exact charge.
I'm at a loss for words with that. That is insane to me. And I think,
they blackballed me from the industry too there, Max. I've applied to multiple positions on Amtrak since then as a qualified engineer with a lot of good years of service. And I'm not getting any response from anybody because they blackballed me by essentially saying that, if you look at my service record now it shows that apparently I use racial slurs for referring to calling myself a slave.
Yeah, really gross stuff there. Just absolutely despicable from the rail carriers. And so, not much else to say there other than, all the support in the world to Paul Lindsay, and hopefully we'll see the arbitrator overturn 3 firings and he'll be able to get his job back.
Yeah, absolutely. That is totally ridiculous. Total retaliation. Sending our solidarity with Paul. Absolutely.
Yeah, presumably because this is a speech issue, right? This is not a performance issue. This is a speech issue. They were offended by what he said. So, I'm looking.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. I'm looking for any day now. People like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and all these people who think that free speech is so important. Surely they're going to be on top of this case just any day now, I think. So we'll let you know when that happens.
Right.
With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, folks. Appreciate you staying a little long with us, but had a lot to get to and really wanted to get to all those stories. Really appreciate y'all. Teddy Ostrow coming on. And one more plug for the new merch, tvlr.fm/store, tvlr.fm/store. You can buy our new Join a Union or the Boss Will Get You shirt. Pre-orders are up now through mid-August. Shirts will be in at the end of September. If you have the money, please do send us some money to tvlr.fm/donate so that we can keep doing the show. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Adam's going to see you Thursday morning with another episode of Shop Talk, and I'll see you next week.